Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Have you ever imagined yourself as the hero of a romantic series, in which life was going to turn out just fine? There was a loved one around, and work was only a pleasure. Adriana always dreamed that her life was exactly like in her favorite TV series, which she always watched as a child. And it seemed to her that everything was exactly like that. A favorite husband, a wonderful job, a faithful and loyal friend, with whom she was acquainted since childhood. But who would have thought that a romantic melodrama about her life could turn out to be a thriller? Adriana has successfully graduated in journalism from one of the most prestigious universities in the country. Since childhood, she dreamed of working in this field, and as the years went by, her eagerness and desire became more and more pronounced. By the age of 18, she firmly told her parents that she would study at Moscow University, and despite numerous excuses, she still entered it. Even a very young girl decided to completely abandon the help of her parents and start earning on her own, no matter how difficult it was. At first, it was quite difficult to find a job that could be successfully combined with studies. We had to go through small part-time jobs, and not the most lucrative offers, which offered a free schedule and provided the opportunity to get time off as needed. Soon, Adriana came to the conclusion that in this way, she will definitely not be able to live in the capital without the help of parents. And so it was decided to look for a permanent job with a more or less stable income. The girl categorically refused any simple money, despite the fact that some men offered very attractive sums per evening. By the way, Adriana was quite beautiful and charismatic, and therefore without attention from the side she did not remain. She was quite slender and active, easily found a common language with new people, and could generally without problems to fit into a new team. And it was these features of character helped her to soon get a job as a hostess in a very decent institution. Salary promised to be very decent, such that you could rent an apartment and provide yourself with everything you need in the capital. Times after moving from her hometown were quite difficult, but fortunately, Adriana experienced them much easier than it could be. Betty, who had been her best friend since high school, was always by her side. Betty was in the same class as Adriana. She also graduated from high school and decided to apply to Moscow universities, although she had originally planned not to move far away from home. In many ways, she did it only for the sake of her best friend, with whom they were literally like inseparable. Until the last moment, Betty still refused to go to the capital, but one conversation that took place almost before she left changed everything. Betty and her parents always had dinner together. It was a nice family tradition that allowed them to stay close-knit and close-knit, regardless of the work and study load of various external circumstances, which so often become the cause of discord in families, and both between spouses and between parents and children. And so during the next such dinner, there was a very unexpected conversation for Betty, which she did not expect in any way. "Gold, when are you going to get a ticket to Moscow? Or your girlfriend hasn't decided yet. When will you go?" Mom asked the girl, to which she received a mute question in her eyes. "But you're going with her, aren't you? My dad and I thought that you will go to a university in the capital together and live together, to make it easier at the beginning of your independent adult life." The woman smiled, making it clear that she meant it. By the way, it should be noted that the girl's father was not so long ago categorically opposed to her going far away and leaving them completely alone. Betty once tried to start a conversation about enrollment in Moscow, but it almost turned into a grandiose scandal as the father insisted exclusively on enrollment in the local university, where it was possible to get a profession in different directions. After this conversation, the girl never brought up the topic again, fearing a negative reaction. And then suddenly her mother independently asks when it is better to purchase a ticket, and the father just silently continues, "There is," pretending that nothing is happening. "But you didn't want me to enter a Moscow educational institution." "I'm not sure," muttered Betty, especially watching her father's reaction carefully. You wanted me to study nearby and come home every weekend so you could see me often. And if I go to Moscow, that won't happen. I'll only be able to visit on vacation, and that's if I can make it. Are you sure you want to let me go so far away from home?" There was an awkward silence at the table. It was obvious that the man was not very happy with the topic of conversation and was definitely tense, but he didn't say anything to the contrary. And after a couple of minutes, Betty's mom confidently replied, "Of course you can go to any university you want. The main thing is that it should be your decision and not an imposed option for which you will lose a few years of your life. Remember that everything you do should bring you pleasure. People around you should be sincere and honest, and then your life will turn out in the best possible way." This simple truth, which Betty heard from her mother, she will remember for the rest of her life. But as it turns out, it is not easy to understand what kind of person is next to you, what his intentions are, and how he will affect your life. Being overly trusting and believing that everyone is worthy of a second chance and forgiveness can play a cruel trick. Both Betty and Adriana will see this for themselves. But for now, the girls study, work, and rent a very cozy apartment together, though not in the central part of the city, but close enough to their studies and work. They spent almost all their time together, made new acquaintances, went on steamy dates, and even planned steamy weddings in the future. But not always the fate turns out exactly as we want, and some moments still remain only in dreams. So right after graduation, Adriana almost immediately married Sebastian, whom she met at work. The man showed her quite a lot of attention, always groomed and tied with gifts, and this could not help but win the hearts of the girl. He was very gentle, always helped in a difficult minute. The couple met for a couple of years while Adriana was studying at the university, but then on some family matters Sebastian had to leave for more than a year, to leave the capital and cut all ties. In the future, the man did not comment on this behavior and did not explain the fact that for a year he did not contact anyone. This page of his life remained in the past, and now he was trying to create a happy family. Sebastian was quite handsome himself. He did sports, ate right, spent a lot of time closet, and made very attractive images, which did not go unnoticed by the fair sex. The attention to his person was quite a lot, but he ignored everyone, giving all his attention only to Adriana, who was very flattered by this situation. She felt beautiful and desirable. After returning and solving all his personal affairs, Sebastian almost immediately proposed to Adriana. Knowing that she had already graduated from university and was in search of an attractive job, he promised to make the wedding exactly as the girl wanted. He promised to help her find a job and offered to give up this prospect altogether and take care of herself with household chores, and he would provide for her completely. It would not be difficult for him to do this because he managed a chain of restaurants and also had his own small business in the legal field, which was developing very successfully. But Adriana still insisted on working full-time and earning independently. After the beginning of the relationship with Sebastian, Adriana felt some distance and deterioration of relations with Betty, which often became the cause of bad moods and misunderstandings. Why can't her favorite man and her best friend get along? One day, the girl decided to have a serious talk with Betty to finally understand everything. But the conversation never led to any result. "But why can't you just accept the fact that I have a man who loves me and whom I love?" Adriana said in a hurt and even a little annoyed voice. "You must understand that I am trying to build my happiness, and all our plans about getting married together and everything else are just dreams that may or may not come true. I don't want to distance myself from myself. I don't want to lose such a close and dear person who supported me for so many years in all my endeavors. But I can't force you to continue communication." The girl lowered her head. It was obvious that it was extremely hard for her to realize the fact that the relationship between her and her best friend had deteriorated. "What does this have to do with getting married together and all our childhood dreams?" Betty asked. "That's not the problem. I realize that you're an adult, an independent person, and you have every right to a happy future with the person you love and who loves you. I just can't trust this Sebastian guy. Every time I see him, I get this strange feeling of anxiety and danger. I can't even explain it. I feel like this man is hiding something from everyone, and that he's not who he wants to be. I just don't want you to get in trouble or get involved with the wrong person. Do you understand? Betty looked at her friend, who had been listening attentively all this time, but as if she didn't understand anything, she said, "Jesus, what danger? Do you hear yourself?" Adriana asked rudely. "I love this man. He makes me happy, and I'm safe with him. He always helps me with all my problems, protects me from annoying left-handed men, and never leaves me alone in a difficult situation. He's exactly what I need to live a happy life, and you just can't accept that I have another close person who is as dear to me as you are." The girl watched her entourage's reaction to the words she said carefully to see if it was true. Betty was silent for a few seconds, and then she answered, "You may be right. And I have some resentment that you have a new person in your life who is as important to you as I am, and with whom you spend a lot of time. But I'm sure the problem isn't just my feelings, but Sebastian himself, who seems too perfect. Did it seem to you that he's trying to be something he's not really? That he just seems like that perfect man from the TV series we watched all the time as kids, and then spent weeks discussing how we wanted to live that same life? Is there such a thing in life? I think there's something definitely not right here." "Yes, God," Adriana replied with some indignation, and in a raised tone of voice. "Why can't you just be happy for me? Why can't I just accept the fact that I have such a perfect man who spends a lot of time with me, willing to do anything to make me happy? Even to his own detriment, he refuses to go to a bar with his friends to spend time with me. He understands perfectly well that I need to spend time with my best friend too. I can't do it without her. If you had a boyfriend like that, I would be genuinely happy for your happiness and support your choice regardless of my feelings and stupid thoughts. So why can't you just be happy for me?" The last phrase was especially emotional, and tears glistened in Adriana's eyes. Even though Betty's opinion about her friend's chosen man hadn't changed, and she was still sure that the man was definitely hiding something, she simply hugged Adriana and said, "You what? I'm very happy for you. I think you're going to be a wonderful family, and everything is going to be fine, and that you'll have the wedding you wanted, and that everything in the future will work out like in your favorite show. It's just hard for me to get over the fact that you've become so far away from me, and that we don't live together anymore and don't talk much. So I'm worried that one day you'll just forget about me with your personal happiness, and that's it. I'll be left alone and forgotten." "You mean that will never happen?" Adriana replied confidently to her friend, even though Betty didn't think so. And the main reason she disliked Sebastian was precisely because of the strange feeling of unease and danger. She made the decision to say exactly what her friend wanted to hear, to get rid of the heated situation and get their relationship back to normal. But she wasn't going to just back down. She wanted to find out exactly what was wrong with the man. Why couldn't she just accept him as perfect? And what could be lurking in his past that he never talked about? The main thing was to do everything in such a way that it did not become the reason for the deterioration of the relationship with Adriana and did not lead to unnecessary hype. The wedding was to take place in a few months. Adriana was sure that it would be the happiest day of her life, that she had made the right choice, and would live a long and happy life with the man she loved. But unfortunately, fate did not prepare happy endings for everyone. And at one moment life can turn 180 degrees. Who knows how tomorrow will turn out? But always want to believe in the best, and that's what the girl did. She could not even imagine that she would be in the very epicenter of frightening and terrible events in the near future. Preparations for the wedding were in full swing. Adriana paid attention to every little detail. She wanted everything to be perfect, so that there were no flaws and problems in the wedding ceremony. That's why she followed everything herself. She controlled the design of the hall, looked through hundreds of menu options, constantly monitored the readiness of various props, and clarified the well-being of the toastmaster and photographer. In general, there was a huge number of things to do. And during the whole time of preparation, the girl was incredibly happy, but she was also very tired. Sebastian paid for all the whims of his bride. He did not refuse her anything, neither in fresh flowers, nor in expensive textiles, nor in rings with precious stones. The girl did not particularly care about money. She was not an economist and did everything exactly as she wanted. Occasionally discussing these or those moments with her fiancé, she even wanted to organize a buyout, as is customary to do at weddings. But Sebastian did not support this desire. "Honey, what's a ransom? We live in a modern society, and this tradition has long outlived itself," the man replied to the proposal to organize such an honor in the wedding celebration. "I don't think we should go to the middle of nowhere. Just to hold a couple of contests and pay money to your parents for you. And the guests probably won't be up for that kind of adventure. Let's just have a divine wedding in the best restaurant in Moscow, which will already make a lasting impression on everyone. If you want, we can even get married in Moscow. I'll make all the arrangements, but let's not have these strange traditions of our ancestors." All right, a little upset, Adriana said. Adriana really wanted to organize everything according to the rules and traditions, but at the same time she understood that her parents really lived far away from the capital. Therefore, it would be quite a problem to organize this part of the wedding celebration. It was decided to do everything exactly as it was originally planned, without buying and matchmaking, so as not to waste time and energy on it. Sebastian was completely satisfied with this option, and in all other moments he fully supported the bride. Throughout the preparations for the wedding ceremony, Betty tried to understand what exactly she did not like about Sebastian. She tried to find some information about the guy, but it turned out that he just appeared out of nowhere. After all, to find information about where he lived and what he was doing before he came to Moscow was simply unrealistic. Of course, the search for information took place as secretly as possible. Betty made the maximum amount of effort so that her friend and Sebastian did not suspect anything. She helped in the process of preparing for the wedding, was happy for Adriana, and was always there for her, but still went about her business. In fact, Betty was saying one thing to her friend's face and doing something else behind her back. This situation upset her a lot. After all, she couldn't share anything with her closest and dearest person. After all, it would almost certainly cause misunderstanding and judgment. Betty believed that she was doing a good deed, that she was trying to bring the man out into the open. But was that really the case? Or did the girl really just couldn't accept that her best friend was getting married, that she was able to find her happiness, while Betty was still single and wasn't even in a relationship? What is it worrying about a loved one? Or just jealousy and a desire to destroy someone else's union that just isn't to the girl's liking? Searching for information about Sebastian often enough led to a dead end. It was unclear where to look for information that could somehow help in the investigation. There was no information about his life on his social media pages. There was no indication of the school and educational institution where he received his education until he moved to the capital. There was no information about his family and hometown. But at the same time, from the moment of moving to Moscow, the guy's life was as if on display. Photos and records from that moment are a huge number, and by them you can understand what he constantly does, where he goes, with whom he communicates, and so on. There were a lot of Moscow acquaintances, but there was no point in communicating with them in order to get any information. After all, they had all appeared after the man had moved. Several weeks of long searches of information did not bring any results. Simple photos then from the city, then from vacation, with a huge number of people, and so on. At that moment, when the girl was almost desperate, she found Sebastian's mark on some guy's page in a photo. Going over the mark, she saw that this person was not in the man's friends, but they were clearly standing together in the photo. The shot is quite old. You can see that it is more than 1 year old. 3 guys are standing on the doorstep of the school, And among them is Sebastian, who looks so carefree and happy. You can see from their clothes that all three boys live poorly. In places you can see scuffed stains from constant meetings. Betty could not even think of the fact that the man was from a poor family. She was sure that his parents were quite rich and well-off people, and that was why he was able to achieve such heights in life, was able to open a business and become the manager of a chain of restaurants. She put a like on the post so that she wouldn't lose it and try to find information about the school the man attended. She also saved directly the account of the man who posted the photo, just in case, just to be sure not to lose the lead. And now it was necessary to quickly pack and go to the bridal salon, where Adriana was about to start trying on wedding outfits to choose a dress. It took a huge amount of time, and the girls returned home, completely vital, but extremely satisfied with the day they had spent. The dress she chose was just incredibly lush and radiant, just the way Adriana wanted it. Betty decided to leave the search for information about her friend's fiancé for the next day. After all, she didn't even have the energy to eat. But Adriana had a very interesting conversation that made her think about her friend's sincerity towards her. After dinner, already at the moment when the couple was lying in bed, Sebastian suddenly asked his fiancée in all seriousness, "Do you think I can, whether your friend likes me or not?" Adriana was even somewhat taken aback by such a question. She looked carefully at her future husband to see if he was serious, but not seeing a bit of mockery in his gaze, she said in a somewhat annoyed and even hurt voice, "Do you think she's capable of that? She's my best friend." Adriana was clearly outraged by such a question and didn't understand how her future husband could ask her such a question just a few days before the wedding. She looked at the man perplexed, but he was completely calm. A few minutes of silence, and the girl indignantly added, "And what is it? You're already looking at my replacement. I understand everything, but you can ignore my best friend, and she will never do that to me. And it's completely unethical of you to ask questions like that, especially right before our wedding. You could at least do it in a way that I don't know about your search and election. Otherwise, this is completely abnormal behavior, and..." The girl didn't have time to finish and voice all her outrage, when Sebastian, in a louder and more irritated voice, said, "Yes, no, what kind of nonsense are you saying? I'm not looking for a replacement for you. I was just curious because she's showing some kind of morbid interest in me. She liked my picture today." Adriana looked at the guy with a puzzled, searching look. "You've decided that she likes you just because she liked you. With such judgments, you'd think that you're liked by hundreds of girls. You have an immeasurable number of likes on every photo. Or you might think that out of all those girls you are secretly loved by the person I care about the most, who is putting so much effort into helping us prepare for the wedding ceremony. No, that's not it. She's picture isn't even on my page or one of my friends' pages. It's on the profile of a man who just posted a picture of me from high school time without consulting me at all. He is not in my friends. I have never posted a picture with this man or tagged him in any pictures. I think she is trying to find information on me or just following me. And it's pretty weird, don't you think?" the man asked, in a very serious tone. "Just because I don't want to talk about my past doesn't mean I have any secrets or mysteries. It's just that I think I have a new life now, and to go back to the old one every time is to keep myself from moving forward. Maybe I should talk to her." Adriana thought about those words. She remembered her friend always saying that she was not satisfied with Sebastian, that he was hiding something and seemed like a dangerous man. But it seemed to her that all of that was in the past, and Betty was genuinely happy for her. It turns out that there really wasn't any joy at all. And all these stories and congratulations are just a beautiful picture, behind which remain the same suspicions and distrust. I don't think there's anything strange about it," the girl said in a calm voice, trying not to show her anxiety and displeasure. "Maybe she just saw your picture in her feed, or this guy wrote to her and offered to communicate, and she saw your picture. That's it. There's not many coincidences that happen every day. I don't think you should take it all that seriously." The girl shrugged as if showing confidence in her words, and that it could all be a mere coincidence. But if you want, I can talk to her about not liking your pictures, since you're so worried about it. Adriana smiled at the man. Okay, you're right, Sebastian. It could be a mere coincidence. You shouldn't look for hidden meanings everywhere. The girl was fine with that response from her fiancé. But the situation with her friend still did not give her peace. She firmly decided to understand the situation and talk to Betty to understand her intentions. She didn't like the fact that her best friend couldn't trust her, couldn't let go of all the insecurity and doubts she had and just enjoy life and continue to build her own happiness. With all this, she does everything behind her back, trying to find something that will negatively affect the couple's relationship. Betty, on the other hand, was confident that she was doing a good thing. And in the event that Sebastian really has nothing to hide, and all he is ashamed of is the poverty of his family, then she will just apologize to him and his girlfriend, and then everything will be fine. So she opened her laptop right after waking up the next morning and wanted to look at the picture again, to see what kind of school it was, what city it was in, or to find any other information. But the photo was gone. In the network, the record was simply deleted, and in its place, nothing else was posted. And then the girl immediately realized that Sebastian deliberately hides all the information about his past, and he was directly related to the deletion of the photo. Fortunately, Betty had bookmarked the person who had posted the picture, so she could try to get some information through him. A few minutes of hesitation, and now the girl typed the first message. Hi, I'm organizing the wedding ceremony of Sebastian and his girlfriend. I'd like to ask you a couple questions to use in contests and a wedding quiz. Could use a couple minutes of your time. It didn't take long to get an answer. Literally, after a few minutes in the dialogue, there was a reply message from the guy. Hi, I don't think it's appropriate to ask these questions to me specifically. It's better to discuss all this with your fiancé. Betty didn't expect such a response, and it didn't suit her at all. She knew that Sebastian would not voluntarily say anything about his past, and she needed to get the information as soon as possible. After all, the wedding ceremony would be held soon, and it would be difficult to change anything afterward. A few seconds. After thinking about it, the girl typed the next message. I cannot discuss this issue with the groom because our company is organizing a surprise wedding. Young people do not know about what awaits them, what trials and contests, and therefore they must remain in complete ignorance right up to the most important day in their lives. We have already interviewed some friends, the bride and groom. We are left to clarify literally a couple of questions. I very much hope for your understanding and cooperation. You seem to be one of the groom's closest friends. Poe has spoken to you several times so that we can count on you to help us. This time we had to wait over an hour for a response, even though the guy was online. It wasn't that he didn't respond to the messages, he didn't even read them. And that was the moment Betty decided that none of this was a good idea. And what could this man have already told Sebastian? Came the reply, okay, what exactly are you interested in? The girl exhaled with relief and realized that now she would be able to get some basic information about her friend's fiancé, that she was finally not at a dead end. It was decided not to ask too personal questions, as it might have caused some suspicions. So they were the most predictable and simple. But at the same time, all the information received was very important for Betty. She found out what kind of school Sebastian attended, where he went to study after finishing 11th grade. Who were his parents, including the fact that the guy grew up without a father, as his mother gave birth to a married man who was much older than her. As a result, the guy didn't grow up in the most favorable environment. He studied not too well, and a few years ago, he moved to Moscow with some girl. And that was it. He never got in touch with his old friends again, never showed up in their little town again, only came last year for his mother's birthday, and some issues he didn't tell anyone about. Enough information had been obtained to continue the investigation. Betty planned to go to the town where Sebastian had lived before moving to Moscow to visit the school and university, maybe even visit his mother. But that was only as a last resort. So the girl planned to find out why exactly the guy had come to the town last year and what kind of issues he had been solving for a whole year. Fortunately, it was not so far from Moscow, and it was even possible to rent a hotel room in it quite successfully. Therefore, one could not worry about where to stay and how to get there. Betty decided not to waste any time and start packing right away. She texted her friend that she had to leave urgently for a few days to inspect the new sections for the construction of the coffee shop, but she would definitely be back in time for her wedding. There was no reply for a long time. And just as Betty was about to leave the apartment and head for the airport, she heard the doorbell ring. Behind her stood Adriana, who was clearly upset and even angry about something. "Hi, what's up?" Betty asked calmly, not even expecting what was about to hit her. "You don't look so good." "I'm not." Adriana asked angrily. "I'm not very good, yes. But you're a very good friend. I know all about the fact that you keep looking for information on Sebastian, that you still do not believe him and do not believe all my words." "How so?" "You just can. What's more, you're doing all this behind my back so I don't know about it, so that I think you're really happy for me and helping me from the bottom of your heart with my wedding preparations. How could you do that? I thought we were best friends, that we would be happy and help each other. And it turns out that no one needs me, that my best friend is the person I trusted next to whom I have experienced so much. She's just lying to me, trying to ruin my happy relationship with my family. What kind of friend are you after that? How can I ever trust you after that? But why? Why are you doing this to me? I love him, and he loves me. And we're gonna have the wedding I've dreamed of my whole life. Why can't you just be happy for me?" Tears rolled down the girl's cheeks. She was shivering, and it was clearly visible that she was not just upset, but furious at everything that was happening. She just stood there staring at her friend, while Betty didn't even know what to say to all of this for a few moments. A complete silence fell, which was interrupted by Adriana. "If you're really my friend, if you still love me and care about me, if you want to stay close to me, then stop doing all this. Stop trying to ruin my happiness. Don't try to make me unhappy. I don't deserve it. Just be happy for me. And stop lying to me by going behind my back. How can I consider a person my family and friends if he lies to me at every turn, if he does not value me and my feelings at all?" The girl said through her teeth. "Or do you know all this perfectly well? Or I don't even know how you and I can continue to be friends. The choice is yours alone." Adriana didn't even wait for any response from her friend. She simply turned around and swiftly walked out of the entrance, leaving Betty completely bewildered by everything that had happened. She obviously didn't expect such a situation and such a loud statement from the closest person in her life. And what to do now? What is the right thing to do in such a situation? Is it worth risking relationships and long-standing friendship for the sake of a phantom hope? Find something on Sebastian. Or should I just trust my friend and give up everything? What is the best thing to do, so that as a result not to regret the decision? Quite often in life we have to make responsible decisions that will have a serious impact on life, not only the person who makes the decision, but also his environment. It's a pity that you can't foresee the future and know how everything will end. Betty faced a serious choice on which depends her future and the opportunity to continue communicating with her best friend. The girl thought about the whole situation for a long time, weighed all the pros and cons of each decision, and considered numerous outcomes. She had to decide as quickly as possible whether to continue the investigation or just give it all up and pay attention to herself and her personal life. Although Betty was very afraid of losing Adriana and her trust and their friendship, she wouldn't forgive herself if she put the girl in the hands of someone she wasn't sure of, who causes her certain misgivings and even fear. That's why she still decided to take a risk and go to that small town in which all of Sebastian's childhood passed. To get to the bottom of the truth, she felt that she had to do it, that a lot depends on it, and she would rather be wrong. And there would be some misunderstandings and tensions between her and Adriana, but she would be sure that her friend was marrying an honest man who would do her no harm. There was no time for reflection, and a few minutes after her conversation with her friend had taken place, Betty headed to the train station to buy a ticket. If only she had known how her determination and desire to do what was best would end. Buying a ticket wasn't too difficult. There were quite a few of them. It seemed like no one was going that way. But that was a good thing. I wouldn't have to squeeze in with numerous passengers. The road was tiring and long enough, because of the numerous traffic jams in the capital. Finally, the girl got off at the right station. I looked at the sensations. It was not a city, and God, forgotten village, which raced a certain eeriness. There was practically nobody around, no cars or people, which also put some pressure on Betty's psyche. The first thing the girl decided to do was check into an inn, so that she wouldn't have to worry about her convenient location and a place to sleep. Finding it wasn't hard, as it was located along the city's only decorated central street. The atmosphere indoors, too, was heavy and somewhat oppressive. It seemed to the girl that she was in a cheap horror movie, in which something out of the ordinary must happen. The room was clean, but dusty enough. The air felt alcoholic and heavy. Betty opened the window at once to air the room and get rid of the dust. There was no desire to stay in the hotel, but at the same time, there wasn't much choice. After all, there were simply no other places to stay for a few days in the town. Frantically exhaled the girl, put the bag on the bed, and noticed a small note that was lying on the table. On it was written at large, "Male with neuropsychiatric disorders. Be careful and vigilant." To say that it startled Betty is to say nothing. She felt a wave of unpleasant shivers run through her body, after which she was seized by a strange panic attack, which was not grounded in anything. The girl made a decision to go down to the receptionist's desk and clarify what these strange jokes were and why exactly in her room this note. "You see," replied the girl behind the front desk politely, "about a couple of years ago, a man appeared in our city, very attractive himself. He immediately impressed most of the female population. He was very pleasant and polite, and secretly very sexy for a long time. He was just going through the girls, and then he settled on one. He even proposed to her. They had a quick wedding, and then the girl disappeared. Her parents and friends never saw her again. And the very man said that she simply made the decision to divorce and left in search of herself. Of course, such a story seemed completely absurd, but the girl really filed for divorce before she disappeared. And so the man was single again. So what's so strange about this story?" Betty asked, not understanding what the man and his wife had to do with it. It happens that people split up after they get married, realizing that they're not right for each other. And I think that's perfectly normal. But I wasn't asking you about that. I was asking you about the strange note on the table beside the bed in my room. Betty asked again. "That's what I'm telling you." Just from the beginning of the story, the hotel receptionist replied. Then she went on to say that for a while, the man was feared by everyone. And then there was information that he has some disorders, from which he has several personalities. There was talk that he forced a girl to divorce him, after which he did something terrible to her, but there was no proof. Rumors from the diseases appeared after the local psychotherapist gave an announcement on television, in which he talked about the fact that in the city there is a man with some deviations in behavior, and therefore it is worth to be especially careful. Of course, all suspicions immediately fell on the visiting man. After all, the town is small. Everyone knew everything about everyone else. As a result, he became feared and even shunned. And he did behave strangely, Betty clarified. But you know, I didn't notice it. He'd been staying at our hotel for almost a year, and in all that time he never behaved strangely. The only thing I did notice were significant mood swings, which he did have quite often. I don't know if that could be considered a sign of a disorder, but on a mental or neurological level. But it was, and otherwise he was a pleasant enough person, always saying hello and giving a large number of compliments. Even offered to have coffee a few times, but I declined each time. Anyway, He was just like all the other guests. How did the story end? Is he still living in your hotel, or has he already bought something in this city? And what did they say about him in the future? Betty wanted to get as many details about this man as possible. After all, she was going to stay in town for a few days. Soon after everything had happened, the rumors had subsided, and the man was getting quite a bit of outside attention again. As a result, he found a new girl who was also quite rich. Her father had a chain of restaurants, which he bequeathed to her. This couple had been in the public eye long enough, planning a wedding ceremony, and they ended up getting married. The girl was just head over heels in love with the man, and he treated her warmly and tenderly, but not much better than all the other girls in town. The only thing that made the relationship fairly obvious was that he kissed his wife exclusively and was always by her side. Despite the fact that the girl was beautiful, many wondered how such an attractive and prominent man could choose her. After all, the character was far from sugar. Personally, I think that all this is because of money and her condition. After all, as I noticed, the man does not work anywhere. It's quite possible that the marriage was a marriage of convenience. The receptionist waved her hands, making it clear that this point in the story was not known to anyone until the end. So he could get something from her as a result. What makes you think it was all for the girl's money? Betty asked. Of course, some people do marry for convenience, but it's the first time I've ever heard of a man doing that. They usually go to any lengths to get a good reputation in the community. Well, yes, but sometime after the marriage ceremony, the man's new bride also disappeared and signed over to him the restaurant chain she got from her father. You have to admit, it's pretty weird. In addition, she left him the house and all the property, and even a power of attorney to dispose of all the assets. They say she's also filed for divorce, but I do not know this specifically, and therefore I will not mislead. The man himself told everyone that his fiancée simply moved to another city, and soon he will follow her. The girl, just like the first fiancé of this strange man, did not get in touch with anyone else, and for more than a year she has not appeared in our town. God willing, they're both doing well. But to be honest, I don't think that's likely. It's more like he was just there for the property. Although the first girl didn't have much of anything. A regular working girl who worked in a convenience store and lived with her parents. Who knows what's on the minds of people with mental illness? Right? Anyway, we decided to leave a warning in all the rooms to be careful not to fall for this man's tricks. After all, we mostly have people like you staying here who don't know about this whole thing. Where is this man now? Concerned, asked the girl. After all that she had heard, she clearly did not want to meet him on the street and fall under his spell. And who knows what is on the mind of a man who really has mental disorders and does not give control over his actions. Sometime after everything happened, he really left and did not appear again for quite some time. The town is quiet and peaceful with nothing going on. But many people still remember this strange story, and therefore be careful walking through the streets and alleys. To say that this whole conversation frightened Betty would be an understatement. She didn't really know what to do, or if she should go anywhere at all. Given that it would soon be getting dark, but Adriana's wedding was going to take place in just a couple of days, so there was no way to stay in the room. Betty decided to go to the school where Sebastian studied and try to find out something about him. She was met by a guard who recommended her to come back in the morning. You see, this is very urgent, said Betty. A close friend of mine could be harmed by one of your students. Therefore, I need to find out everything I can about him to help her. The girl begged the man for a few more minutes to help her in her search for information. And at the moment when he almost agreed, and Betty said the full name of her friend's chosen one, the man's face changed dramatically. And then he said in a gruff voice, I think you should get out of here. This guy isn't exactly welcome in our school. We don't talk about him or even remember him. I don't suppose you know anything about him, since your friend has accepted his marriage proposal. But all I can tell you is stay away from him. What you may find out about him, in time, will definitely affect your lives, and God forbid anything bad should happen. The man was about to leave when the girl called out to him. "Wait, how come? You just warned me that he is a bad man, but you don't tell me anything about him. How am I supposed to explain all of this to my friend so she realizes what a mistake she's making?" You realize that just the guard's words won't mean anything to her. "Can you give me a file, or at least tell me something about this guy's life?" Betty looked hopefully at the guard. "Sorry, no," the man answered gruffly. "I have no right to pass on information about students to third parties, except for specialized government services. This includes, I have no right to spread any information about him, and I don't want to do it, so it won't affect my life. If you have something happened, I advise you to simply contact the state authorities, for example, the police, and then you will be helped to solve the problem. Have a nice day." After saying that, the man just walked into the school premises, without saying anything concrete, saying that Sebastian was not the best person and that he was someone to stay away from gave confidence that Betty was moving in the right direction after all. And for good reason, she decided to go and still find all the information she could about the man. Before her friend could get married, the territory of the university was already closed, and therefore there was nothing left for the girl to do but to go back to study all the moments. Only the next day she returned to the room, and all night she thought about where and how to find information about who Sebastian was, why he should be feared, and how to convince the dearest man in her life. The thoughts were changing one after another, and Betty didn't even notice how she fell asleep. The girl woke up at dawn from a terrible dream that literally made her blood wail in her veins. She jumped up and took a few more minutes to come to her senses, realizing that everything she had seen was just a dream. A couple of hours later, she was standing on the doorstep of the university Sebastian had once attended. For a long time, she could not find a teacher with whom she could discuss topics of interest to her, and as a result, the girl found herself in the office of the dean, who looked at her with some displeasure. The man scrutinized Betty carefully, obviously trying to assess her intentions. After that, he asked in a rough voice, "And what made you visit our Temple of Knowledge, girl? Apparently, you are not our student. Otherwise, I would know you." "That's right. I am not a student," Betty replied, trying to choose the right words to continue the dialogue. "I just needed to get some information about my future husband so I could surprise him at our wedding. Do you have any pictures of him or report cards? So we can have different wedding contests. He refuses to give me anything on his own for some reason. He says that this page of his life is already in the past, and he doesn't want to go back to it. God, it's a circus. They didn't even come to our university to look for fiancés' photos. Shame on them. This is a temple of science and knowledge, not a circus to have 1 million photos. But I may still have my report card. Depends on when your potential husband graduated, or maybe he didn't even exist. What is this young man's name?" asked the dean, dialing someone's number. After the name of the right person was called, the man hung up the phone and looked at the girl carefully. In his gaze, there was some distrust and even some fear and worry. For a few minutes, there was complete silence in the room. Then Betty heard that you should not marry this man. I recommend that you reconsider your decision and then have the marriage ceremony. This could be one of the biggest mistakes of your life. You have no idea who this man is, do you, or where you found him? He hasn't been in town in years. That's right. He can't come to town because he has a lot of work to do. There's a girl in the capital. He recently proposed to me, and now we're getting ready for the wedding. I decided to give him a present and find his old photos because he keeps saying they just got lost when he moved to the capital, and I had the opportunity to learn a lot about him. After all, you cannot just take and marry a complete stranger." The girl smiled, and then once again looked at the dean carefully. The man was obviously thoughtful, completely immersed in his thoughts and worries. He was obviously planning to say something, but did not dare to do it. And there were a few more minutes of silence. And then the man began to speak. "It is very good that you do not act frivolously and beforehand try to find out something about the person with whom you want to connect your life. I think that's the right thing to do. But not all the truth is exactly as we want it to be. Do you understand? The man looked at the girl carefully, trying to catch the changes in her behavior and mood. Sebastian was not our best student. He often skipped classes and was not very responsible for exams and credits. Often we had to force him to learn disciplines and even threaten him with expulsion so that he would still take up his mind. The guy was constantly organized and nervous, and it was very noticeable. But we wrote it all off to the fact that he just studied and worked a lot. Besides, he was not from the most affluent family, and therefore he just lacked basic human goods. Things were relatively good. At times he would get smart and start studying. But that wasn't always the case. Every once in a while, he'd get out of control. And at such times, we had to kick him out of class. Once we even called the police, because Sebastian and his classmates had a rather serious conflict, as a result of which the guys almost killed each other. Since then, he's been under increased scrutiny. All the rest of the time. But said Betty thoughtfully, so far I don't see anything particularly frightening or worth paying attention to. Young boys fight often enough, and scuffles are not uncommon. So the fact that there was a fight is not surprising. And the fact that the guy was wooden, it's really quite unclear what was wrong. Maybe it was just a lack of sleep and rest. Otherwise, everything was fine. Betty almost couldn't believe what she was saying herself. Such behavior on Sebastian's part in her student days seemed strange to her. After all, now he was a gallant and calm man who didn't get into any conflicts, even verbally. Of course, people change over the years, but for some reason it seemed to the girl that the problem was not a fight, but something else, something that was not told to her. That's why after a couple more minutes of standing in complete silence, she decided to simply press the man's pity and conscience. She said, well, since there is no danger to me in marriage, I can build a happy future with this man. So what about a photograph or a report card? Can I at least try to find something? The dean sat in complete silence for a few more minutes, thinking over everything that was happening, and then said in a serious and somewhat depressed voice, no, that's not all. What should you know before agreeing to marry this man? He was supposed to study in our institution of higher learning for 4 years, but he was here only till the 3rd year. During the 2nd semester, his condition began to deteriorate rapidly. He became restless, showed constant aggression, not only towards students, but also towards teachers. We appealed to his mother to refer the boy to a doctor. That's what the woman did. Sebastian was gone for several weeks, after which he returned to teaching. He resembled a mere robot from life, who did everything he was told and showed no emotions. At the same time, it was constantly as if he was hovering, falling out of reality, not reacting to anything. What was going on around him? His mother said that he was prescribed some medication that should improve his condition. The guy became like a shadow, practically stopped eating, didn't react to anything, only, roughly speaking, went from corner to corner and only frightened everyone with his appearance. And one day he just disappeared. He stopped showing up at the university and did not contact us. We contacted his mother, and she told us that she and her son decided to put him on inpatient treatment because the medication was acting strangely. The rumor was that she just stopped giving him the pills. After that, there was a serious aggravation of the disease, and the guy was taken to a psychoneurological dispensary. He underwent compulsory treatment there and was supposed to return after its completion to complete the educational program and get a diploma. But this did not happen. As a result, I never saw him again. But the idea about this kid was not the most rosy. After the last words, the man trembled a little, which made me realize the sincerity of his emotions and feelings. So it turns out, not everything is as good as I thought, she said thoughtfully, and even with some fear in her voice. He didn't tell me that he'd been forcibly treated in such an institution, and he certainly did not warn me about any illness that might cause a seizure or uncontrollable behavior. There was a note of tension and even fear in his voice. Betty was worried not for herself, but for her friend, who was currently alone with her boyfriend, and he had a serious disorder. And that was creepy. What happened to him next? You don't know where he went or what he was doing. Maybe I just got it all mixed up, and we're talking about different people with just similar names. I mean, coincidences like that happen. Now, Sebastian is behaving just perfectly. I haven't noticed any aggression on his part or weirdness in behavior. He is like a normal person, very polite and attentive, always stays by my side and helps in everything. It can't be that in secret he turns out to be a simple serial criminal who is very skillfully hiding for such a long period of time. That's right. It would just be impossible to hide. In fact, I don't think he could be a serial offender, but you never know what to expect from a man who's been involuntarily committed to a psychiatric hospital. You know that not every person comes out of this institution completely healthy. Some simply hide the whole essence of the problem in order to get out into the normal world. And then things start happening that no one would expect. Although perhaps your fiancé has undergone a very successful treatment, and now he is really a completely healthy person who does not have any deviations in behavior and oddities that would be worth paying attention to. In addition, our dispensary is considered one of the best, and all the doctors in it have specialized education, which allows you to get excellent results from therapy. Therefore, I advise you to just observe the behavior of the man. And in the event that everything will be normal, then it is quite possible to build a full-fledged family with him. After all, every person is worthy of getting a second chance, right? The main thing is to be careful. Is there any way that I can contact Sebastian's doctor to discuss his condition and get some recommendations on how to monitor and improve his condition? I think that such information would be very useful to me, considering that I am going to be associated with this man for the rest of my life. Perhaps if the doctor had told me that the condition would be completely cured and that I would not have to worry about its recurrence, I would have been much more comfortable and would not have had to worry about the possibility that some trouble might arise at any time. Betty said this in a particularly excited manner, to give her words meaning and emphasis. Unfortunately, there is no way to contact the attending physician. The woman who had been taking care of Sebastian all along disappeared a couple years ago and never showed up again. Some say that one of the patients was involved in her disappearance. But personally, I think that she just decided to start a new life, working hard for many years to help numerous patients, while forgetting about her own happiness. She often said that one day she would definitely go away. She would definitely leave this job. And then she would be completely happy. The man spread his hands and added in general, I suppose they won't give you any information at the hospital. They just don't have the right to do that. I think the best thing to do is to go to the boyfriend's mother. If you're really going to marry this man, you should probably get to know her. She might be able to tell you something new about him and his condition, because I can't tell you anything else about it. Betty asked a few questions about where the woman lived, where she worked, when it was best to visit her, and so on. After that, the girl said goodbye and headed to the address to find out if everything was as serious as she thought it was from all the conversations. Unfortunately, Sebastian's mother was simply not at home, neither on the first day nor on the second. On the third day, when the wedding ceremony was scheduled, Betty found Kathy at her house. She no longer hoped to meet her, but fate had decided otherwise, and now the girl faced a very difficult choice: to go to the city to help her best friend, to prepare for the wedding ceremony and be there on the big day, or to stay in town. Still getting to the bottom of it, both options had their advantages and disadvantages. Of course, one could return after the wedding ceremony was over, but there was no guarantee that nothing terrible would happen to Adriana before then. A few minutes of deliberation, and Betty stayed at the boyfriend's mother's house after all. Immediately after the girl entered, she felt some of the tension that prevailed in the place. She looked up to better understand exactly where she was and what to do in case of a critical situation. The girl sat down on the offered chair, but she refused the tea, worried that it might not be entirely safe for her health. The awkward silence began to drag on, But the first to speak was Kathy, who asked why the girl had come to her house in the first place. Where did she get the address? And who was Sebastian to her? Why was she so interested in him in their town? It became clear that the woman already knew that she was doing a little investigating and gathering various information that had a direct bearing on her son. I'm just a friend of the bride, and I was only asking around about your son to get to know him better. After all, we're going to be friends for a long time. The girl smiled, as if expressing her predisposition to such an outcome. Sebastian's mother looked at her with the same seriousness and distrust. "And that a lot of things learned?" asked the woman in an irritated voice. And then Betty realized that there was no need to try to show herself in a perfect light. One should just say straightforwardly everything she thinks and what she should find out. Over the past couple days, she had gone to quite a few places and was constantly asking about Sebastian and his life. Many didn't even know about who he was or what he was doing in the town, but there were those who knew the guy personally and had been present during all of his changes. Such people told Betty that Kathy was not the best mother and not the best person. And that's why it's worth being careful with her, so that nothing bad happens. For several days, we had to gather information literally by bits and pieces to understand all the confusing stories, and hundreds of times to rethink everything we heard in order to come to the right conclusions about the man. You know, the beginning, Betty. I've learned quite a lot about your son in a few days. There's a reason they say that he who seeks will always find. So I found a lot of information about Sebastian and who he was, how he studied, how he socialized with other people, and so on. And also on the very first day of check-in, a very nice girl told me a very unpleasant story about how a couple of years ago in the city appeared a very attractive man during the relationship with which two girls disappeared. And just about the same time, Sebastian was leaving Moscow on some business of his own. When I put all the facts together, I realized that this is a man who suffers from mental illness and who married two women, both of whom have stopped contacting each other. That's your son. I honestly have no idea what exactly he did to them, but I know for a fact that it couldn't have been anything good. Sebastian was involuntarily committed to a neuropsychiatric hospital, and I'm pretty sure it was for a reason. As a result, he just left town so that everyone could forget about him. And then 2 years ago, he came back for something. To kill two girls and do something obviously wrong. Betty watched the woman's reaction carefully throughout, and after the monologue was over, the woman just laughed out loud from the bottom of her heart. She then shifted an angry yet mocking gaze to the girl. Nothing good could be read in it, and therefore Betty became very uncomfortable to be in the room. In a rather rough and commanding voice, the woman uttered, "But, and what did all that information give you? Did it make your life easier? Yes, my son is not the best person, but he didn't commit any crimes. He just loved and wanted to be loved in return. He's a model of what a real man should be. With each of his wives, he was polite and courteous, fulfilled every whim and desire before the wedding. He even gave expensive gifts. He showed me pictures of every girl he was going to marry. And your girlfriend was no exception. He sent me pictures, and I appreciated his choice. Now she will be a new toy in his collection that will complete his life and make it beautiful and memorable." To say that the woman's words startled Betty was nothing. She didn't even know what to say to what she had heard and how to react to all this. She understood only that both the son and the mother had obvious mental deviations, and all her fears and suspicions about Sebastian were not in vain. The only thought that was literally beating in the girl's head at the moment: why didn't Adriana listen to me, and what should I do now? Anxiety and fear overwhelmed Betty, but she remained seated, waiting for some kind of closure, or at least an explanation of what had happened to the girls. To understand what to expect in the future, Kathy rummaged through her locker for a long time, then threw a stack of pictures of her friend on the table in front of Betty. Each frame depicted her in a different pose, but constantly asleep. That is, there was not a single frame on which was exactly awake. The woman simply did not have. And the worst thing is that all these pictures were clearly taken by the future husband of Betty's best friend. And Adriana hardly knew about them, and about the fact that for several nights she became just an object for very strange photo shoots. And why do you need all these pictures of Adriana sleeping? Asked the girl to the woman who was looking at her with a sick smirk. How can you tell from sleeping photos what a person is like, what they are like, and how they will behave in real life? I think it would be much better if you met in person, and then you wouldn't have to hand over the photos and worry about your son's future. Besides, Adriana is a very nice and friendly girl. I think you two could get along without any problems. Betty smiled, trying to lighten the mood. If you'd like, you could come with me to the wedding ceremony today. I'm sure your son has invited you to the big day of his life. You'll get to know each other better. You'll have a great time. It's not always about working and staying home. It was like the woman poured herself into Betty's every offer. And it was even more frightening. The look was somehow sickly abnormal, and it was almost impossible to tell what would happen even in the next second. One had to just wait for some kind of response or action from the woman, while trying to smooth the situation as much as possible so as not to provoke any conflicts and strife. A few more minutes of silence, which seemed like an eternity. And then the woman decides to answer Betty, who had been sitting quietly looking around the room for all this time, already running through options in her head as to how she could escape in case of danger. She was thinking about possible means of self-defense and evaluating the possibility of calling one of the neighbors for help. Objectively, the latter option was unlikely to be effective, since the cabin was located on the very outskirts and the neighbors were quite far away. Besides, all the neighboring buildings looked completely uninhabited and only increased the feeling of anxiety. I will definitely meet my son's wife, but not today, but after the divorce, the woman suddenly said, as long as she is the official wife. And while there are so many eyes and interesting looks around them, I don't want to appear. I don't want to be seen. And then asked where the next girl who hangs on my son. I don't want any of that talk. So I'll wait for my turn for acquaintance. After these words, the woman laughed again, and from this laughter, unpleasant goosebumps ran down the girl's body. I think they are not going to divorce. Your son is very fond of my friend and says that he is going to live with her all his life. I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And they will be happy in the future. And Adriana is also very fond of your son. They've already lived together and realized that they'll get along just fine. And they'll be fine. Betty tried her best to change the conversation and lighten the mood, but it wasn't working too well. After the last few sentences, she saw Kathy's angry look, which didn't bode well. The woman looked at Betty with hatred and dislike. Then she came close enough and bent down so that their faces were at about the same level and spoke loudly and aggressively. No, my son will never connect his life with some girl who doesn't understand the complexity of his nature and his fragility. They can't live together. And soon after the wedding, he will realize it again and come to me again to be a free and happily man. He has always come to me. The woman smiled ineffably, eerily. What made Betty practically shrink into a chair? Always came, and I helped him become free of all that stuff again. They were all unworthy of my son. They all behaved badly. They were all wrong for our family. I will choose a wife for my son. I will find the right one for him. And then he will be happy. He'll be happy. I'll be happy, and everybody will be happy. And all these girls, they are just empty dolls, which should be an ornament, not an object of adoration and love. They are not worthy of love. They cannot be loved. They just have to stand beautifully in the closet and please the eye, and they don't have to do everything else. Only worthy girls do the rest. The whole speech was organized in the same direction, that some girls were unworthy of her son, that they would also disappear, like his past wives, that she would help him to get rid of them, and so on. It was more like some kind of nonsense that was hard to believe, but the words sounded so convincing. and the behavior was so inadequate that the girl did not even doubt their truthfulness. She just sat and thought about how she could escape from this house as soon as possible and get to her friend to tell her everything, to keep her from making the wrong choice. For another half hour or so, Betty sat in Kathy's house, listening to the same thing, thinking about her next steps. The woman behaved completely inappropriately, pacing from side to side, laughing constantly. She had frequent mood swings and abnormal seizures, during which she simply convulsed for several seconds. From the monologue, it became clear that all of Sebastian's past wives had really disappeared, and that the man and his mother had something to do with it, that they had a peculiarity that had been passed on from mother to son, and now he also had it from time to time. Perhaps, due to the peculiarities of the body, return, and other factors, they are not as bright as Kathy, but it is definitely there, and it is a potential threat directly to Adriana. Therefore, the girl must be rescued as soon as possible. After a couple of minutes of thinking, Betty rushes to her hotel to pick up her things and go to the capital as soon as possible. She hears the same intimidating laughter through which the woman shouts, "Run, run, and you won't get far anyway. You will not have time to do anything. We'll have a beautiful new doll in the collection. I'll dress and feed her myself." Ha! The incredible surge of fear and adrenaline did its job, and the girl found herself outside the hotel. Literally, in 20 minutes she flew into the room and quickly began to collect all her things, calling a cab and trying to call Adriana. Her friend didn't answer. She saw the missed calls perfectly well, but anger and resentment took over, and so she decided to simply ignore any attempts to contact her. And that had been a serious mistake. Betty never got through to her friend. Kathy, on the other hand, had no problem getting through to her son and telling him everything that had happened in the last few days. About Betty being well aware of their family, the fact that the man had previously had wives and their disappearance, and everything else. This arrangement did not suit the man because he already had a definite plan, which was almost completed. It remained only to complete the last couple of actions, and it would be possible to replenish his unusual collection with a new exhibit, which would be just right. But everything could spoil some girl who thought she was a detective, and still managed to get to the bottom of it. He couldn't let that happen. Betty never showed up at her best friend's wedding ceremony. She didn't send any text, didn't call, and didn't even show up for the morning salute that the girls had chosen together. Adriana was deeply resentful of her, and it marred all the joy and solemnity of such an important day in her life. She did not understand how the closest person to her, the one who had remained by her side in all her troubles and misfortunes, did not appear on the happiest and most responsible day, did not stand by her side at the altar, and made no attempt to congratulate her. But had she known the sacrifices Betty had made for her, what she'd been through, and what terrible truth will be revealed soon, which will make her look at the situation from a completely different side. But now the girl has entered a new stage of her life. She became a wife, formed with her favorite man, a new cell of society in which children and a dog were already planned. Signed plans for the future, a vacation. But all these dreams were only in Adriana's head. And Sebastian had completely different plans for his life and his newfound wife, who was so happy. On the day of the wedding ceremony, not yet realizing what future was in store for her, Adriana had been trying to call Betty for a couple days, but her phone was always out of range. It didn't turn on after a day or two, and everything became clear only at the moment when Adriana received an invitation to the funeral of her best friend. It was a shock for the girl, because she was just sure that she continued to ignore her after the last conversation, and soon Betty would just calm down and get in touch. But now that she is gone, Adriana blames herself for not listening to her and not trying to find out everything, for not supporting her friend and leaving her alone with all her doubts and worries. Of course, the issue of attending the funeral was not even discussed. Adriana went to the funeral alone. Sebastian referred to the strong employment on work and stayed in the capital, giving the girl just his card so that she could pay for a cab and all the necessary expenses. The guy perfectly played the role of a man who is also experiencing grief and strongly sympathizes with the loss, who knows nothing about what happened, and certainly has nothing to do with it. Betty is killed in an automobile accident. A car came around the corner and drove into the exact side the girl was sitting on. She had no chance of surviving such a collision. Strange as it may seem, the investigation showed that no human remains were found in the second car, which simply burned up as a result of the accident. Hence, there was no one in it at the time of the fire and explosion. This circumstance seemed very strange. The burial ceremony was extremely difficult for Adriana. She simply could not believe that her close friend was gone, that she would never come to visit her again and become her child's godmother or comfort her in her time of need. It is always difficult to realize the loss, especially when it happens completely unexpectedly. The girl just did not know how to continue to enjoy every day, how to continue this life, knowing that now she will be completely alone, without the one who since childhood had always been there for her, helped, comforted, and loved her. After the funeral ceremony was over, Benjamin, Betty's father, approached Adriana. For a few minutes he stood beside her completely, silently, then took the girl's phone out of his pocket and held it out to Adriana. The girl looked at the man questioningly. "My wife and I talked and decided to give the phone to you," Benjamin said. "Maybe it has some pictures of you together, or some videos of you being happy, or some other memories you'd like to keep. I think you will have your phone safe and sound, and will be a reminder of our Betty, who loved each of us so much, who was always happy about life and every new day." A tear ran down the man's cheek. He handed the phone to Adriana and then walked towards the cafe where everyone was already gathered. Adriana spent a few more minutes over her friend's grave. She talked to her, cried, talked about the marriage ceremony and how it had ended, talked about her plans for the future, and all the while crying. How strange. Such a joyful and happy life can learn and lose all meaning from one single event that affects all future dreams and memories. How often people do not appreciate those who are close to them, do not appreciate affection and care, experiences, but exactly until they lose a person, until they are left completely alone in this world with all their problems and experiences. But could Adriana have made a difference? Perhaps. If she trusted her best friend, they just blindly followed the man she fell in love with, who appeared in her life quite suddenly and had far from the best intentions. But that was something the girl had yet to find out. And now her only thought was how to survive all this, how to cope with grief and get back to life, and how to enjoy every new day, in which her best friend would not be there. The next few days passed like a blur. There was always a huge amount of people around Adriana. Guests came often. Various acquaintances and relatives called her every now and then. They were interested in her well-being and condition. This all greatly annoyed the man, but he tried not to show negative emotions so as not to attract to himself increased attention from the outside. He just stayed by his side and tried to support his wife, so that all the hype around them calmed down, and he was finally able to move forward with his plan. But he never did, luckily for Adriana, because one night, when the girl again did not sleep after a full day of tears and worries, she suddenly remembered about the phone, which was given to her by the father of a deceased friend. Adriana decided to look at the old photos and records that were in her friend's phone, delete it from all social networks, and then disconnect the device and put it in a box where all the most valuable things for the girl lay. In fact, there were mostly various insignificant trifles and trinkets, but they were the ones that reminded her of the most important and joyful days in her life and gave her warm memories. And Betty's cell phone should have gone there too, if it weren't for the strange discovery in it. Just as Adriana was about to turn off her mobile devices, she noticed that a notification had arrived about overflowing memory and a suggestion to delete the last recorder. A new recording that was simply taking up a huge amount of space on the device. This immediately raised certain questions and misunderstandings. After all, Betty had never, ever recorded anything on a voice recorder, for as long as Adriana could remember. She had always kept everything, either in typed form, in notes, or just in her memory. All conversations she could easily recount down to the smallest detail. Therefore, there was simply no need to use such a program. And that's why it was decided to listen to the last recording, the duration of which was more than 50 minutes, and what Adriana heard made her feel terrified and start to worry about her own safety. She realized how stupid, serious mistake she had made, although it was already very late for realizing her wrong. On the tape was the whole conversation that he had with the rector of the university where the boy studied, and then with his mother, who confessed everything that she and her son had done, who promised to get rid of Sebastian's new wife, making her his puppet. Literally, the whole conversation was recorded up to the last seconds when the woman shouted after Betty and ran away, and threatened that she wouldn't get there and wouldn't be able to tell anything. The situation was not just frightening, but out of the ordinary. The girl just couldn't believe that she was in such a mess, to get out of which it is necessary as soon as possible, so as not to say goodbye to his life. A feeling of fear and panic came over her head. The first thought was to wake up her husband and simply demand an explanation for everything that was happening. But immediately came the realization that this was a bad idea, which could cause not the best consequences. A few minutes of hesitation, and the girl was already packing her suitcase to go down to the iron. Before it was too late, she packed only the essentials and almost inaudibly slipped out of the apartment without closing the door behind her. Adriana didn't yet understand where to run or what to do in her situation. But one thing was for sure, staying with Sebastian in the same room was dangerous for her, and Betty was able to save her best friend. After so much fighting, even if it was at the cost of her own life, a few blocks in total darkness, not knowing where to run or what to do. And suddenly she sees a police station, which she runs into without a second thought, all in tears. And for a few more minutes the duty officer tries to calm her down, refuses water with sedatives, and only after that the girl's speech becomes more or less understandable to him. Adriana tells about everything that happened from the beginning, about how her relationship with the man was formed, how he showed attention and courted only her, how her friend warned her of the danger, but she wouldn't listen. The girl locks herself away and cries, but continues to tell, realizing how important it was for her and her safety, and how important it was for Betty, which now there is no way to get back. She tells the man on duty about all the suspicions her friend had about how she had asked her not to get married, and how she had gone to some small town to find out the truth, but had not returned. The story was quite long and highly emotional. At times I had to stop to calm down and drink water to catch my breath. After all, the employee simply stopped understanding what Adriana was trying to convey to him. And so, after all the information was laid out after the girl had completely emitted her soul, she reached out her phone and turned on the very recording, after which she had to run away from her own home. The man on shift duty listened to the girl carefully, despite the fact that up until the moment the recording was turned on, he was sure of the story. The man thought that Adriana was simply under some substances and did not realize what she was doing, or that she and her husband had had a simple domestic quarrel, which she was experiencing so emotionally and impulsively. But the moment the girl turned on the tape, it was no longer about prejudice and ridicule. Now the case was acquiring new colors, and it was necessary to deal with it as soon as possible, before the man could get anywhere. After finishing listening to the recording, the duty officer immediately called a senior officer and sent a patrol to the specified address, in order to apprehend the man, who was now considered potentially dangerous. The police caught Sebastian just as he was about to leave the apartment, and without explanation took him to the police station, where Adriana was waiting for him. While everyone was getting to the specified address, the girl was filling out the provided application form, in which she spelled out everything that had just happened. She had not yet finished filling out the paperwork when Sebastian was taken to the police station, and only at the moment when he saw a frightened and crying Adriana, he realized everything and stopped resisting. Judging by the fact that the girl was already filling out the application, it will definitely be accepted, and there is evidence of his guilt. And Sebastian just silently went into the cell and watched Adriana crumble his plan to pieces as she saved her own life, while depriving him of freedom and all the possibilities. The man didn't even think about the fact that after he got rid of Adriana, there might still be some obstacles to overcome. So he just waited until the fuss was over and was about to realize his plan, to put it into action. How lucky the girl was that she remembered about her friend's phone in time and decided to look through all the files, including listening to the strange recording of the dictaphone. But she could have just turned off the cell phone and put it in the box. And then, in a few days, she would have become a mere memory to everyone around her. The application was accepted immediately. There was overwhelming evidence that Sebastian was guilty. All that remained was to find the girls who had disappeared earlier. Would they be found safe and sound? Or would their fate be as bad as Betty's? Kathy was apprehended in her own home. The woman resisted violently and was clearly disturbed, so sedation was necessary. She did not give any statements, did not contact law enforcement in any way. She simply remained in solitary confinement until the investigation and trial were completed. Sebastian reluctantly but still cooperated with the police, hoping to get some leniency on a future sentence. He revealed the exact whereabouts of his ex-wife and how he had managed to get all of their assets transferred to himself. It turned out that the man's mother brewed a strange concoction of herbs and paid the girls with them, after which they became obedient and left-handed. And then they turned into fretless vegetables who had no opinion of their own. They just lay in the basement, which was located under the house, and did not try to get out of there. To these same creatures, once upon a time, a woman paid for her son. And it was clear from the dean's words, which were also recorded, the girls were found in a terrible state, but fortunately alive. They were badly emaciated, in rags with horrible bruises and scars. There was a long recovery ahead, but there was hope that they could still get back to normal. And Adriana, no matter how hard she tried to forget all the horror she had been through, she just couldn't do it. She often had nightmares and a dead friend who blamed her for her own death, then laughed and cried, "I'm glad that I was able to save the closest person in my life." She could no longer trust anyone with her heart and decided to live out her life alone. This is how sudden love can not only destroy many years of friendship, but also close the veil of eyes, not letting you see the whole frightening truth. And a life that resembles the most romantic, beautiful fairy tales, which is the envy of many, can one moment become a true horror story, one you wouldn't wish on your enemy.
Subscribe and click the bell.
Harry dialed Emily's number for the umpteenth time, but to no avail. She didn't answer. She'd promised to let him know when she got there, and not a peep. How could this be? Well, yes, his beloved was never distinguished by neatness and commitment, but in such a situation, he even called the airport. The plane he'd put Emily and her friend on had flown on schedule, landed safely, and after that, both girls had seemed to vanish. Neither one of them answered their cell phones. He didn't want to let his beloved go on this trip. He persuaded her to wait for his vacation and then fly together. But no, alone in a foreign country, because anything could happen. He rushed around the apartment for the second day, dialing Emily's number. Then Emily, then her friend, but the answer was silence. Why do you keep looking for the fifth corner? At least go eat a proper meal. His mom called him irritated. How do you not understand? I'm worried. If something happened? The son replied. I see. It happened. The girls went out. What's so surprising? It was their first time out. What have they seen here but their shop? Not to mention their town. Well, they've gone out, and they're right to enjoy themselves. Why do you say that, Mother? Harry was snapping at me. Why should a man be suspected of every mortal sin? Who's talking about sins? I'm talking about going out in the ordinary sense. Sightseeing, swimming, sunbathing. It's all new, it's all different. It's not up to you, and rightly so. Let Emily have her fun. She'll be calmer from now on. They say that he who has not had a good time in his youth will go mad in his old age. Do you want that? Don't you know any other way of things? Does a man have to go out, either in his youth or in his old age? You don't know of any that don't go out at all. Harry was irritated, anxious, and then his mother said such things instead of calming him down. Of course, she hadn't liked Emily or Mary either, from the beginning, but that wasn't a reason to talk down to people. I know all about it. I never went out much. I never had time. And I'm not that kind of person, but things happen. Ethan in the front yard, he married his Kathy right out of high school. Everything seemed fine. In 20 years already had a second child, but in 40 she got a rash under her tail and went on a bender so that she forgot her husband and children. It's good that at 40, the children are already adults, but it can be worse. We have such a Clara at work. She told about her sister-in-law. You could listen to stories about Mom's friends and their relatives all day and night, but Harry was sick enough. What did he care about someone's sister-in-law? When his favorite girl disappeared somewhere, and where? In Turkey. They remembered the horror stories they'd heard somewhere about girls who'd been kidnapped and sold into slavery. It was Mary who confused her, dragged her off to some unknown place. In some ways, his mother was right. It was necessary to send this friend away at once, literally forbid to communicate with her. He thought, knowing perfectly well that it was useless to forbid Emily anything. They had met almost a year ago in the store where Emily worked, not in a store, but in a big supermarket. Harry had gone in there to get groceries and saw the girl arranging something else on the shelves. The way she did it, her actions reminded him of some kind of music, as if she were playing a harp, as if she were performing some kind of dance. Every movement was full of such grace, he could hardly take his eyes off the chiseled figure, which was not hidden by the ridiculous uniform. A glance at the face, and he realized he was lost. There are times when a girl's figure is beautiful, but her face is so bad. It can be the other way around, and her face was perfect, at least to Harry. He couldn't pass her by, so he went up to her and said, "How cleverly do you do that?" And he was surprised at his own determination. He'd never tried to meet a girl on the street or in a store. Of course, the girls he had 25 years old, there were, but they were former classmates, fellow students, that is, those with whom to get acquainted specifically was not necessary. Experience. The stranger replied cheerfully, turning to Harry and lighting him up with her smile. "And you live near here, I suppose? I've seen you before." Crazy. She had seen him and even remembered him. How could he have missed her? "Yeah, I used to come into this store a lot." "Yes, I'm in the next block. I come here, but why haven't I seen you?" "That's impossible. You can't be missed." Harry was really impressed. "I'm not always in the store. Sometimes I'm at the cash register, and there's a lot of them." "Emily, stop talking. You'll earn your remarks." Through a woman running past. "Oh, sorry." Harry realized. He took a jar from the shelf, pretended to look at it, and talked to the girl about the goods. "Are you guys so strict around here?" "What time do you work till?" "At 10 I finish, at 11 I leave, from the other side, and the service entrance." Without looking, said the girl, and turned around again, suddenly winked with a slightly slanted green eye. "We really can't talk during work. I'll meet you," said Harry, tossed the can into the basket, and headed for the checkout. "Emily, then, is my one and only." He thought and had no other thoughts. It was only 4 o'clock in the afternoon, but he was ready to take a watch at the service exit, or better yet, to stand there in the store, watching Emily, guarding her from other men's gazes. But he had to take the groceries home, and it was ridiculous to be on the street or in the store in case they took him for a thief and Emily for a fool. No, he's an adult. He should behave like a grown-up, serious man. At home, Mom, sorting out the shopping, was surprised. Where are the carrots? He didn't buy any greens. What's the butter for? We have it. I'd asked you to buy chicken, but you bought some half-finished products. What should I do with them? You didn't buy rice either. And why did you buy sprat and tomato? Twirling the same can in her hands, the woman was annoyed. What am I going to make dinner out of? Your sprat. Mom, I really like sprat and tomato. Today I'll eat it for lunch. I don't need anything else. I'm sorry. Do you want me to go again? For the chicken and everything else? No, thanks. Sending you is a waste of time. I gave you the list. You're so stupid. But Harry wasn't listening. He went to his room and threw himself on the couch, holding the jar in his hands, which were touching Emily's hand, and lay there with a blissful smile, waiting for the time to pass. Peeking in the door, Mom, of course, guessed it. It was clear. He's in love. And what kind of sprat do you like? Tell me, please. Not a sprat, Mom, but the best girl. I'll introduce you soon, and soon we'll be married. That's how it is, and send them to the store, and instead of buying everything on the list, they will fall in love with a sprat and lie with it in their arms. The woman grumbled and went to the kitchen. Miranda, not that she was very worried about this behavior of her son. A grown man, what can I say? It was high time he fell in love and got married. But what kind of sweetheart did he find at the store? That store-bought dating never does any good. A friend of mine went to the store, and a man saw her, and they got married. How many years has he been tormented with her? And by the way, she's got a bride for her son, Abigail, a wonderful girl, beautiful and smart, a co-worker's daughter. Miranda's known her since she was a kid, just like the rest of the family, lovely family. But no, he went to this store, and who knows how this acquaintance will turn out. And it turned out that Harry met Emily after work. Alas, she did not come out alone, but with her friend, Mary, who was probably a pretty girl too, but who disliked him because she prevented him and Emily from really getting to know each other. But Mary apparently felt it was unnecessary and quickly left them alone together, and thank you for that. You must be tired. Harry asked, introducing himself. No, I'm very energetic, she answered cheerfully. And anyway, let's be on a first-name basis. We're not at a reception. The girl's cheerful mood relaxed Harry, and together they walked to her house, chatting casually. The young man learned that Emily, like her friend, came from a small town. They wanted to enter somewhere, but failed, so they had to get a job in a store. We didn't want to go home with nothing, but we didn't want to go home at all. There's nothing much to do there. We want to achieve something more, so in a year we'll probably prepare better and go to school. Or we'll figure something else out. We're not going to put the cans away until we retire. And we live in this house. We're renting a 2-person apartment on the 2nd floor. You see Mary's home. Why don't you come in? Harry, I'd love to come in, but Mary's there, and she's a chatty girl, so we can't be alone together. He didn't want to be alone with Emily, but he didn't think of anything intimate. No, he just wanted to be near her, to talk about everything, to learn more and more about her. Why don't we go and just sit somewhere? Harry suggested. I'm coming from work, and I need to get changed and clean up, and then it'll be too late, because I'm working tomorrow. But the day after tomorrow I'm off, Then we'll go out, okay? So they began to meet on weekends. And when Emily worked, Harry, who worked until 6, met her in the evenings from work, always with flowers with some small but nice gift. Soon the guy already on Emily's rights as a young man unashamedly visited their rented apartment with Mary, and the girl herself invited to his place. Emily's acquaintance with Miranda also took place. Oh, the potential mother-in-law didn't like her son's girlfriend, and not because she had another bride in mind for Harry. Not because Emily had any conspicuous flaws. She just didn't like it, and that was all, but the woman didn't express her complaints to her son. On the contrary, she praised the girl both in her eyes and behind her eyes, in conversation with Harry and her friends. Wonderful girl, and beautiful and modest, lives far from home and does not hang around. Behaves decently, works officially, well, just fine. She still found one physical flaw in her favorite son, but she told not him about it, but her friend on the phone. Harry overheard his mom saying, "Yes, she is beautiful, but I look at people's hands first of all, and they are not beautiful. The palm is wide, the fingers are thick, short, some kind of claws, not hands." Harry heard him, but only grinned. He didn't think Emily's hands were ugly, but rather childlike, touching. Miranda did not give up trying to change her son's mind, but decided to act stealthily. She praised her son's choice and admired the girl's beauty, but she kept telling stories about her sons, allegedly her friends and coworkers. "Vanessa, what's going on at home? Her son was so clever and handsome, but he married a guest from some village. She had a baby, and then she got a divorce. Now she wants to take half the apartment from them, and she was such a nice girl, such a sweetheart." Harry was well aware of the implication. "Mother, Emily, and I haven't married yet. We haven't had children, so we're not going to divorce. Besides, she's not from the country, but from the city, a resort, by the way, where any apartment is more expensive than ours. I'm not saying anything about your Emily. I'm just telling you about what's going on at work. You and I have to talk about something. But what do we talk about? Not soccer, especially since you're not interested in it, but you could be interested in your beloved's relatives. That's very important too. How is it important? How could I possibly be interested in her relatives?" Harry was both amused and annoyed by such talk, but Emma wasn't interested either. She married someone who didn't remember her kinship, and now she's been offered a good job, and there are questionnaires and checks. And it turns out that this husband's entire family has been in prison 5 times, and now Emma will not see a good job. How's that for a turnaround? I don't like these turns. Emily had no one in jail, and she herself had no jail time, no lawsuits, and no apartments taken away from anyone. Leave me alone with your friends and their kids. Harry was already angry, in fact, and he didn't know much about his beloved's parents. He just wasn't interested. From her fragmentary phrases, he realized that her relations with her parents were rather complicated, and that upset the girl, and if that was so, then why bother with questions? As if they had nothing else to talk about still, as it was. Every meeting with Emily was a real holiday. She was so positive, so cheerful, so able to lift his spirits. If Harry feared anything, it was that someone would intercept. He had such happiness. Still, she works among people, every day in front of many men, but Emily did not give any reason for jealousy. On the contrary, it seemed that she was afraid of losing her boyfriend. This really raised the self-esteem of the young man, who had never considered himself such a dream for any girl. He wasn't trying to bribe the girl, to pay her financially for her attention, not at all. He saw that Emily was not the least bit self-serving. Yes, he was a well-to-do man, earning good money, but he had never heard the slightest hint of even the most trifling gifts from Emily. He himself was happy to give her gifts, genuinely pleased with her admiration and gratitude. Harry himself did not notice that his savings began to melt like sugar in boiling water. He did not skimp on expensive clothes for his beloved, nor on jewelry. When by Christmas the guy wanted to please Emily with a new branded handbag, and of course, not an empty one, he, after counting the money, realized that there was simply not enough money for a model worthy of his beloved. He had to turn to Miranda. "Mammy, can you lend me some money for a while?" "What's wrong?" The mother was even frightened when she heard the amount of money she was talking about. "You used to have money, didn't you?" "Where did it go?" "I had some and it surfaced, but I'll have more soon. Don't worry, I'll close a lucrative project soon." "Then what?" "Your Emily will be back, sucking you dry like a vacuum cleaner." "Mom, don't. Emily has never asked me for a dime. If you're sorry, don't give it to me. I'll find someone else to borrow it from, but it's not worth it to slander someone for nothing." "I'll give you the money." "I'll give you the money, of course, but think what you're doing. You are going to get married." "With what money?" "You'll have to buy everything for the bride and the celebration itself. The wedding will be in the spring. I'll still have time to earn so much." "Don't worry, please. I've never robbed you." Yes, they planned the wedding for spring because they had not yet applied for it, and there was no engagement, but Harry was already sure that he would get the consent, and the ring for that day had already been bought. It had cost a lot of money, but he couldn't tell his mother about it. Christmas was celebrated, and Emily was delighted with the gift. At the end of February, Harry finally proposed to her, got her consent, and very soon after this momentous event, Emily said that she was terribly tired of winter, frost, eternal darkness, and wanted to rest in Turkey. Harry was surprised at this statement. "How come without me?" "I have a vacation in April, and we planned the wedding for April. Then we'd go on a wedding trip together." "How are you going to go alone?" "Why alone? With Mary, she's on vacation too. Can you trust her with me? We're going for a couple of weeks, so we'll make it a honeymoon trip, like a bachelorette party or something." "I don't know what you're worried about." "You don't trust me, do you?" "Why wouldn't I trust you?" "I'm just scared for you. I don't know what's going on. But isn't it true that sometimes these things happen to single girls?" "No, I'm not letting you go. Let Mary go alone if she wants to." "What are you talking about?" "Anything can happen at home, and the ceiling can fall on your head." For the first time since we met, Emily sounded annoyed. "And anyway, I'm not asking your permission. I'm informing you. That's why I'm going now, before we get married. Otherwise, as soon as I become a wife, you won't let me go anywhere. Mary's already gone to get a trip, and now you're starting all of a sudden. You want to hurt my feelings before you leave." Harry didn't want that at all, and realizing that his beloved was going anyway, he decided that he shouldn't spoil her vacation. She was really tired, exhausted for the winter. Let her rest, sunbathe, gain strength and new impressions. And now Emily and Mary had gone away, and for the third day there was no news from them. How could this be? I mean, she knows I'm worried. At least send me a text to say everything's okay. I don't need anything else. If she comes, I'll give her a hard time. What if she doesn't? After a week of not knowing, Harry decided that something should be done because 2 people were missing. But first he decided to go to Emily's work. Maybe some bad news had gotten there that hadn't reached him for some reason. There, in the personnel department, he was given some strange information. On vacation? No, they both quit their jobs, got full pay, said they weren't coming back. I'm surprised you don't know. You're Emily's fiancé, aren't you? "I must have misunderstood something," Harry muttered, and went to the house where the girls rented an apartment. The door was open, and some people were dragging tools and materials into the apartment. They were the owners, who said that Mary and Emily had paid them off and had moved out. "And who are you to them?" The landlady, an elderly woman, asked. "No one, an acquaintance," Harry replied. He realized that he really became, or maybe he was his Emily, a nobody. His mother, seeing her son's suffering, at first seemed to sympathize, comforted him, said that if something had happened, he would have been informed long ago, and then began to laugh. "Well, has your sprat gone to the warm seas?" "Oh, son, I told you that these store acquaintances do not lead to anything good. I've been sitting on your neck for almost a year, pulling from you." "All right, she didn't. You gave her gifts. And you gave her not a trifle. You dressed her, put her shoes on, hung her with gold. Who would refuse? You never gave your mother a silver ring in your whole life? Come on, I'm not scolding. You'd better keep quiet. My son was losing it. Don't rub it in. Something must have happened. I think she found a richer patron, that's all. Maybe she went to her village, or where she's from. Maybe she lives in the next street. When you meet her with another man on her arm, then you can ask her what's going on. And I don't put salt on it, I put green oil on it. It'll sting at first, but it'll heal your soul wound quicker." Harry understood that his mother was right in some respects. He really knew nothing about his beloved and the one he wanted to tie his life with. Where was she from? Where were her relatives? Although if he had known what would have changed, well, he would have come, saw that she was not there, so what? Even if I had met her, I would have heard an indifferent answer. Would that make it any easier? What can you do? You have to move on. Miranda didn't hide her joy at the disappearance of her unwanted daughter-in-law. "Cheer up, son. It's certainly a godsend. It would be much worse if you got married, had children, and she disappeared. And so, well, a year wasted and all right, forget it and wait for your happiness. It will not pass by." It was a little inspiring. Except that at the word happiness, Emily's sweet face came to mind, her cheerful laughter. Would he never see her again, his dear bride? Who could replace this girl? Who could not be better? And then my mother had a birthday, not an anniversary, because she immediately said that she would not organize a big party. Only her sister and her husband, her late father, her brother and his wife, and a couple of friends. And you and me, just 8 people, nothing special. We'll sit for a while and that's all, just to meet. We haven't seen each other for a long time. Instead of a couple of friends, only one came, but with her daughter, Abigail. Harry was already a little familiar with this girl. That is, his mom persistently wanted him to meet, and preferably marry, her daughter's girlfriend. He liked her a little, but not enough to marry her, and compared to Emily, Abigail was a loser, though she wasn't a bad-looking girl. She was very pretty, but her pretty head with its doll's face, its baby face, was crowned by a too fat body. Yes, she was such a nice fat girl, simple-minded, trusting, very homely. It is said of such people from childhood that they will be good masters, but did Harry need that? He needed Emily, fun, quick, unpredictable, and loving. And this Abigail, what? Yes, a good hostess. She's probably good at making soup, but loving? No, she hardly knows what that is. At table, of course, he was seated next to Abigail, told to look after her, and Harry dutifully offered her various dishes, served her bread, napkins. He did not know what to talk to her about, so they said nothing to each other except thank you and please. Then the men decided to go out on the balcony to smoke, and Abigail's mother suddenly jerked. obviously pushing her daughter under the table with her foot and making some significant grimaces. Abigail realized, "Oh, Miranda, I'm so grateful to you. Such a lovely evening, but I have a headache. Mom, should I go home?" "I wanted to talk more. What's your hurry?" Her mother was upset. "I can walk home alone. It's not far. It's late. It's getting dark. So I'll walk. I'd love to walk too," said Harry. He and Abigail went out of the house. He was about to go to his car, but the girl held him back. "Don't. You've been drinking." "I'd love to walk. It's such a beautiful evening. I'd love to get some air." And her hand slipped under the young man's elbow. "I'd love to walk too." Harry smiled, looking at that hand, unexpectedly very beautiful, white, with smooth skin, long, thin fingers and sharp, manicured nails, not at all like Emily, but Abigail was the opposite of his favorite. "Well, if Emily was Emily, why not Abigail? We should get married anyway. It's high time she got married. Our mothers have married us off long ago, and we shall be a decent couple, and what's the matter? I've had love before, and I'll never have anything like that." It was uncomfortable to keep silent, so he decided to talk to Abigail a little. "You're probably just tired of sitting at this boring party, among people who are not old?" he asked with a smile. "Why not?" Abigail replied eagerly. "Your mother organized everything so well, and it's not so old that it's boring. It's just that I've got a bit of a headache. Do you do anything fun without your mom? You know, companies, friends, clubs," and immediately regretted his question. It's clear that Abigail is a homebody. What kind of clubs? And indeed, the girl mixed. "Well, with friends occasionally sit somewhere, although no, that I will lie, not really. I go somewhere and with someone to have fun, but I do not need it and do not need. I love my home. I love to read, watch movies, do crafts. I'm boring, aren't I?" "Why not?" Harry exclaimed quite sincerely. "Not at all. You're the right Abigail, the right kind of woman for life, for happiness, for family. I suppose that's what a woman should be. It would be worse if you were 25 and running around dancing. I'm already 26. Abigail sighed. "And no family. Maybe because I didn't go dancing, where would I have met? I work in a women's collective at school. At the institute there were mostly girls. They are all married already, have children, so with me they have no time to meet and no need. But sometimes I'm jealous." The girl spoke without a tear, without any bitterness, just telling me. Harry thought that she was not capable of strong emotions, and perhaps that was her good fortune. "It's just that my mom keeps trying to fix me up." Abigail grinned. "Here's to you, too. I realize my mom's been hinting for a while that you'd be a better choice. Why don't we just humor our moms and get married?" I said it, and I was scared. What if she said yes? No, I mean, she's a good girl. Maybe she's the best option, but what if Emily comes back? Abigail, as if reading his thoughts, grinned. "Aren't you afraid I'll say yes? I'm not going to say no, but I don't want to do it on the fly. I need to think about it, to talk, to get to know each other a little. Isn't that right? And if you change your mind tonight, I won't remind you, don't worry. I'll just consider it a joke. Here's my house. I'm not inviting you over. I'll come back later, okay? In the meantime, you can call me if you want to talk." "You're right, Abigail. You're so right. I'll definitely call, and we'll talk about everything else. Obviously, we're not going to register the marriage right away." That was the end of it. Harry did not go home at once. He decided to take a walk along the street, to wait for the guests to leave, to avoid questions, hints, and advice from older companions who had lived their lives and knew better. It was better to walk alone, to think without interference. About whom? About Emily, of course. He forgot about Abigail as soon as he said goodbye to her. He thought about his missing lover all the time and was horrified that Emily herself would never know, nor would she want to know how he'd lived all those months. And he'd lived like that, thinking about her all the time. Not about why or where she'd disappeared to, but just so he wouldn't see her, no matter who he talked to. His first thought was always to tell Emily. And now, too, as if he saw her in front of him and asked her mentally, "You'll come back and I'll be married. What then?" And she seemed to answer, laughing, "What's what? You'll be divorced, that's what." He came home and the guests had gone, and his mother was doing the dishes, and when she heard her son open the door, she came running out of the kitchen, asking him questions. "What took you so long, Harry? Did you see Abigail off? What did they talk about? Did you go to their house? I saw Abigail off. We talked about personal things, but I didn't go to her place." Harry gave a short report. "Oh, well, what did we talk about? Why can't you say a word to your mother?" Miranda was upset. "I'm curious. I've been dreaming about it for so long." "What is it? What were we supposed to agree on in half an hour?" "We just talked, agreed that we'd call each other, and then we'd see. We haven't planned a wedding yet. It's a little early, isn't it?" "Well, of course, we should talk first. Although he's not young anymore, it's about time. Don't take too long. To be honest, I dream about it day and night, about your wedding. You will live with us. We have a bigger apartment." Miranda began to outline her plans. "Mom, no one's thinking about getting married yet." "What are you talking about? I don't understand." Harry really didn't understand why his mother was so eager to marry him. It was quite simple. "Or are you waiting for that sprat of yours?" "Well, I'm afraid the devils will bring it, and they will. Who needs it in the Emirates, or wherever it is? They're gonna get mad, and they're gonna kick your Emily out. And tell me, son dear, will you really accept her after all this? Don't you have any self-respect? I won't let her on my doorstep, and I'll bequeath this apartment to my nephews." "No, Mom, that's impossible. Why are you running ahead of the locomotive? No one gets married, no one comes back, no one dies. And you." And so they went to their rooms dissatisfied with each other. But from that day on, Harry and Abigail began to see each other quite often. At first, it was the young man who took the initiative. He realized that it would be difficult for Abigail to be the first to call, to invite to meetings, and without it all communication could stall. But for some reason he didn't want that, because it was interesting to communicate with Abigail, and in general, it was calm and reliable with her. They spent the summer beautifully, going to the country on weekends, swimming and sunbathing, picking berries, talking about everything in the world. Abigail didn't have to think about where to find money for another gift or some expensive entertainment. She didn't like restaurants or clubs. Everything was simple, homely, and Harry felt that was exactly what he was missing. Then Miranda announced that it was Abigail's mom's birthday, and they should definitely go. Harry didn't think of refusing, especially since he had his own views on the day. He figured that if it wasn't Emily, who cared who was around? Abigail was not the worst option. He'd bought a ring beforehand, certainly not as fancy and expensive as the one he'd gotten for Emily, but not because he didn't think Abigail was worthy. He just realized that money should be saved, and in the middle of the celebration he asked for the floor, got down on his knee, and asked Abigail to become his wife. To the applause and joyful tears of both moms, the consent was received. The wedding was performed, and they began to live together in Harry and Miranda's apartment. The mother gave the young couple 2 rooms, and she herself took the smallest. There was no adjustment of character between the young people. From the first day, they began to live peacefully and quietly, as if they had been married long ago and knew everything about each other. "I can't get enough of you." I was Miranda. "All my acquaintances complain about their children and daughters-in-law. They have one thing wrong or another. But you are just like Dobes. We are like old landlords, all the talk about what to buy, what to cook, but at best, what movie to watch in the evening, and we are not even 30 yet. How many years to live like this, from breakfast to dinner, from work to home, from home to work? Yes, you can call it stability, but you can also call it green longing. Saved from this routine, memories of her, of Emily, with her would be a completely different life. Soon, and in the measured existence of the young family, came a change. Abigail announced that she was pregnant. This was a great joy, but also a source of great anxiety for everyone, both for the future parents and grandmothers, especially since the pregnancy was quite complicated, and at the ultrasound it turned out that Abigail was carrying twins. It was a happy expectation of a miracle. 2 new people were to appear in the world at once. Harry felt truly happy for the first time in a long time, an established adult man. He loved his Abigail, who had given him such happiness, and was prepared to give him 2 children. And then the children were born, a boy and a girl. While Abigail and the children were in the maternity hospital, the relatives were choosing names. For some reason, everyone was expecting 2 boys, but now they had to think of a name for a girl. They thought it would be Ethan and John. "Why don't we make her Kathy?" "Oh no, my grandmother was Kathy. Very hard luck. How about Lucy?" Miranda suggested. "No, I don't like it. It's a heavy name. Lucy has a difficult personality. How about Lisa?" "Well, you're the dad. Why don't you say something?" suggested. We went to Harry. He almost said the only woman's name dear to him, Emily, but he bit his tongue in time. As a result, the children were named Jordan and Olivia. Beautiful names, wonderful children. The choice of names, the purchase of the children's dowry, the equipment of the nursery, in all this Harry took a very active part. I feel like the father of the family. And then, finally, Abigail and the children were discharged, and his role was suddenly the last. Life revolved around the twins, who needed a lot of attention. No one had time for the father of the family. No, Harry, an adult and sensible man, was far from resenting his wife, and even less jealous of her children. It was just that life had changed unrecognizably. Now he cooked his own breakfast in the morning. His wife slept, exhausted after a sleepless night with the children. Gone were the morning conversations, which, as it turned out, set the tone for the coming day. Gone were the family lunches, the mainstay of their life together, the dinners that relieved the day's tension. What was? There was this. Your shirt. Look in the closet. No? Well, wear the same one you wore yesterday. It's clean. You eat in the kitchen. There's something in the pot. Heat it yourself. I have to feed the kids. You're finally here. Why are you so late from work? I have to go to the clinic with the kids. Don't take your shoes off. Let's go together. And so on. Somehow I coughed. My wife and mother got worried. How did they freak out? Not at all like before. Here's a thermometer. Drink some decoction. Take some mixtures. Put on warm socks. No, not at all. Abigail was worried in a different way. Do you have a cold? Oh, stay away. Don't go past the nursery. Go to the bedroom and stay there. I won't come in, I'm sorry. I don't want the kids to get sick. Even without a cold, he was afraid to go near the children. God forbid you breathe out some adult germ on them. So that's it. He became an extra in his family. Not to talk to someone, not just sit next to someone and like to reproach no one. What else was missing? Not to complain that his wife gives too much time to the children, but it was dreary and lonely. The vacation was approaching, and Harry realized that it did not please him at all. Not having to go to work would be a joy, would it? At work, at least among people you can talk and joke. But at home, what? No one, in fact, does not refuse to communicate. They ask questions, are interested, but so out of politeness. They don't listen to the answers until the end, or run away to the children. The main thing was to see her, to hug her at least once more, and having given his friend his consent, he began to pack. The first thing to do was to report back home. Harry didn't worry much about how Abigail would react to his message. He suspected she wouldn't. Maybe she would be relieved. He decided not to delay the conversation, especially since he was leaving soon. In the evening, when the children were asleep in their room and Abigail was ironing the children's clothes in the kitchen, he asked her bluntly, "Abigail, do you think I should go on vacation for a couple of weeks? Would you be okay with that?" Abigail, not raising her eyes from the delicate rags she was stacking, said a little surprised, "What's there to be offended about? You're on vacation, and you and I can't go yet." "Go, of course. Where are you going? To Turkey?" A coworker offered a trip for half price. It won't be too hard on the family budget. All the more reason. "Go, of course, I'm not going to object." And Abigail, smiling brightly, looked at her husband. How do you know, if she had cried, rebuked him, discouraged him, resented him, maybe Harry would have refused. He loved Abigail and the children, and he didn't want to cause them any trouble. But if his departure wouldn't upset anyone, why not go? As it turned out, it would upset and alarm someone. Miranda heard the conversation between husband and wife. She did not interfere at once, did not comment on what was going on, but later she came upon her son. "What are you up to, Harry?" Furiously, she whispered to her son, "What turkey?" "Abigail, so here to kill, and you go to warm your belly? But you two are here, and your mother comes almost every day. I don't have to do anything, and I'm really tired. When the children are older, I'll let Abigail go on vacation alone, and we'll manage here, won't we?" "You will, yes, even though you're not familiar with your own children now. Anyway, don't avert your eyes like I don't know why you want to go to Turkey. Didn't you get a message? But that's too much. I didn't get any news, Mother, and don't make up nonsense. Let's say Emily is in Turkey, but where in Turkey? I have no idea. You think I'm going to run all over the country looking for her? You would, and I assure you, it's a small world. So you have my word. Don't go anywhere, stay home with your wife and kids. What kind of vacations are vacations when the kids are small? It won't end well, you won't find Sprat, and you'll lose your family." Abigail, of course, is quiet, patient, but no patience is unlimited. His mother's words had no effect on Harry's decision. He still went on vacation with a friend. Yes, his mother was right. He had hoped to meet Emily, although he did not believe that it was possible. But the truth was for Miranda. The world was too small. When he checked into the hotel, Harry saw a girl of familiar appearance behind the desk. It wasn't Emily, but the face looked familiar, and he realized it was Mary, the friend his sweetheart had left with. He rushed to her, hoping to find out about Emily, but when she came to the counter, Harry couldn't resist. "Emily, is that you?" With joy and anguish, he said, approaching the girl. "Your papers." With a professional smile, said Emily, holding out her hand for his ticket, and with the same smile, without looking at him, said, as if continuing the business conversation, "You can't come here. Come here in 3 hours. I'll finish, then we'll talk." Everything was just as it was then, 3 years ago. Gasping with happiness, thought Harry, going to his room. And she was still as beautiful, light, cheerful, and loved to tears. Thoughts of Abigail, his mother, his children were gone. It was as if they did not exist in his life, as if he and Emily had parted recently, without having time to change something in their lives. The next 3 hours lasted endlessly. His companion tried to find out something, but Harry answered in vain, and he went to the beach alone, having achieved nothing. Harry, long before the appointed time, was already standing at the service exit, keeping his eyes on the door from which Emily was to appear. She came out, saw Harry, and flashed him her unique smile. Harry went up to the girl and put his arm around her. "Emily, darling, how I've missed you. How I missed you." The girl hugged him too. "I was always thinking about you," she whispered. Their embrace was not passionate or strong. It did not feel the heaviness of their bodies, as if two souls met in space and merged with each other. So they stood side by side in silence, as if conversing with thoughts and feelings. Then they separated. They looked into each other's eyes. "Why don't we go to a restaurant?" Harry suggested. "I don't care about restaurants." The girl dismissed him. "Let's go to your room, order dinner there." They ordered dinner and the next morning breakfast. They were so happy together that there was no time left even for the clarification of relations. Harry didn't want to disturb the union of souls by asking what had happened, why Emily hadn't come back, what she had been doing all this time. She hadn't asked much either, hadn't reacted in any way to the news of his marriage. Harry felt guilty himself. He tried to justify himself. "You were gone and I didn't care about anything. They told me to get married, so I did. How do you want me to come back now? You're married, you have kids, but divorce is still a thing." "Yeah, you know, it's the wife. She's so indifferent." "I don't think she'll be upset. A divorce is a divorce. What's the big deal?" "What about the kids? I'll pay child support. I've been promoted. I think we'll have enough money to live on. Are you coming with me?" "No, it's not that quick. I have a contract. I have to work till the end of the season." "But don't worry, come on. I won't stay long." "Think about it. What's there to do here? You think it's good to be alone all the time. Mary and I have already split up. She's got a boyfriend here. We live apart. We don't talk much. Emily, I swear you'll never regret coming back." They spent the whole week together, but when they were going back to the airport, Harry met his friend. "You had a lot of fun, I see," he said with a sneer, either with disapproval or envy. "What kind of a hottie did you get? Former love? And present and future and forever?" Harry replied with a distracted smile. "Are you going to go on a date once a year?" My friend asked. "Why should I? She's coming. She promised to come back to the city. She has a season to finish. She has a contract." Harry explained. "What about it? And the fact that you've got a family, you've forgotten about that, haven't you?" His voice grew colder and colder. "What's family got to do with it? There are such acts of civil law as divorce. Don't you know?" Harry was already angry at his neighbor's words. "I do, and I know what a pleasure it is to get divorced, but you. Think about it. You've got Abigail the Gold. What about this one? How did she end up in this hotel? Who cares where she works or how she got there? We love each other. She promised she'd come. And Abigail? What can I say? Yes, Abigail, Gold. And that's why I hope everything goes well with her, without too much scandal, without screaming, and without tears. Well, if it does, I feel sorry for Abigail. 2 kids after all, and here. Oh, stop it. What's wrong with you?" "I don't know. Stop shouting. It'll be all right. It'll be fine. The main thing for me is to get Emily here, and I'll take care of everything else. Everything else can be taken care of. Whatever you say, I don't think anyone's going to talk you out of it. It's up to you. Just you watch when you come to Abigail. Don't tell me that you've met love, about the divorce, all that stuff. Something tells me that such people don't always keep their word. Shook his head, Buddy. Bite your tongue, I beg you. He will keep his word, you'll see. But no matter how strong Harry's confidence in Emily's obligatory arrival was, his friend's words had a grip on his soul. He wondered what would happen if Emily really didn't come. They had called. The girl had said that yes, she was already going. There was a month, a week left to go, but the confidence was shattered. Harry doubted, and every day more and more, he was nervous, lost his appetite, slept badly, irritated, and Abigail as if she didn't notice anything. Her husband said nothing, and she, seeing his condition, offered some drops, decoction to calm his nerves, and only that. She wrote off Harry's mood after the vacation as nervous tension, and she herself was quietly rejoicing at his arrival, telling him about the news, mostly about the children. Sometimes only he caught her testing glance, but he kept silent. Indeed, why upset her before her time? Miranda, on the other hand, could not be deceived. She saw the mood in which her son had returned and guessed the reasons for the change. At first she kept silent, but then, left alone with Harry, she asked him if he had seen his sprat. How is she doing? She's probably coming to visit. Mom, please, whether she's coming or not, whether she's seen or not, let's not talk about it. My son turned away. I'd love to never know anything about her at all, but thanks to you. Anyway, it's up to you. But I beg you not to upset Abigail. After all, she is your wife, your children's mother. You can't change her for this one. Think about it. How are you going to live if you tell Abigail now and break her heart? Remember, I'm on her side, on Abigail's side, and I don't want to know you if you ever mess with that pest again. I ain't gonna break nobody's heart, and I ain't gonna tell nobody nothing. There's nothing to tell, Mom. Stop it, please. It hurts to hear everything you say. Harry was hurt by the fact that no one believed in his beloved, that mate, that Mom. Everyone was sure that Emily wasn't coming, that she had spun around again and given up. And he was sure that she would definitely come. There was nothing left to do but hold back, not saying anything yet to Abigail, who had become even more of a stranger after he'd passed 2 weeks next to the one that seemed to have been made for him. 2 days before the season ended, Emily's phone went silent. She didn't answer calls. She didn't answer texts, and then her phone was disconnected. She disappeared as if those 2 weeks had been some kind of dream, and they were, in fact, a dream. He just went on vacation, just met there the one without whom it is difficult to live, but you can, and you can even happily. His children are growing up. His wife loves him. His mother, however, sometimes looks at him the same testing, and sometimes even mockingly. That's what is funny to her. The fact that the son did not work out with the woman he loved, that's how she knows that it did not work out, because Emily may well show up. Harry argued mentally with those around him. The season had passed, the next season had begun and ended, and there had been no word from his beloved. Life was gradually returning to its normal course, and even the memory of Emily seemed to be fading, though it had not completely disappeared. Could he forget the one on whom so much of his life depended? The one who had shone a bright star on a gray, humdrum life. How much I have learned since I met Emily, learned what love is, and what betrayal is, what pain is. And also during this time, had time to get married, to become a father, to learn what is not love. Learn to live without love, only with responsibilities. How hard can it be? But nothing is harder than being separated from Emily. Will she never, ever be in my life again? I can't bear it, I promise you. The unhappy man in love suffered. He knew perfectly well that he would survive. He had already survived it once, and this time he would manage somehow, and perhaps he would meet her again, and maybe even more than once. Christmas was approaching, the first such holiday for children who were about to turn a year old. They decided to celebrate it at Abigail's mother's house. She was ill and couldn't come, so they couldn't leave her alone for the holidays. First thing in the morning, Harry took his wife and mother and children to his mother-in-law's house and returned home to grab some dishes they had prepared, but did not take at once. Left alone in the empty apartment, he sat down by the table, pulled out his cell phone. A couple of miracles, if fairy tales and soap operas were to be believed. No word from Emily, of course. She hadn't answered her phone in months, and she wouldn't now. She could have at least texted for the holiday. Congratulations, happiness in your personal life, but no. Why don't you dial her number yourself? So Harry decided to do it, and he did. Oh my gosh! The phone was answered. The world's most precious voice answered. Hello, Harry, is that you? Who else, Emily? Where are you, tell me? I can't go on without you. I'll go mad without you, understand? He shouted, almost sobbing with happiness. And I'm here, I'm in town. Harry, why don't we meet? I'm staying at a hotel now. I've got a room. As if nothing had happened, Emily said. Tell me the address. I'll be there in a minute, please, but don't disappear again. I'll be right there. My darling, my only one. Forgetting that they were waiting for him at his mother-in-law's house, that he had to bring some more salads, Harry jumped out of the apartment to run, drive, fly to meet his beloved. At some point, though, he pulled out his phone, quickly typed a message, and sent it to his wife. It's all right? Don't wait, urgent business. How Abigail would understand these words, he was not interested. Let her understand as she wants or understand nothing. That was not the main thing for him now. He was on his way to meet the woman he loved, the only one in his life, and they would never part again. He would never let go of his Emily, and his hands were shaking so much that he couldn't write anything else to Abigail, but he wanted to write everything, that they were getting divorced, and that he loved someone else. He didn't write, but fine, it was all the same. Why write, we'll have to meet again and say everything in person, and then her mother will tell her if she doesn't understand something. All right, Emily is here. She's not in Turkey anymore, she's at home here. And now I will not let her go anywhere, never and for no reason. He thought, hurrying to Emily's room. Everything would be different now. Everything would be different, just the way he wanted it to be, just as long as she didn't go anywhere else. Emily opened the door for him, still as fresh, beautiful, loved. Emily, I beg you, tell me, what do you want? What are you missing? Anything, just don't disappear again. Don't ever disappear. I'll do anything for you. Do you believe me? From the doorway he shouted. Emily was silent and slightly bowed her head, looking at Harry with a smile in which perhaps there was deceit and betrayal, but there was also love, and for that, anything could be forgiven. Come on, Harry. New Year's Eve is coming. Let's celebrate it properly, shall we? Without answering, the girl said. Her gaze, the sound of her favorite voice was freezing. Harry hugged his beloved, kissed her, felt her kiss back. Only close to midnight did he come to his senses, edge of consciousness. Harry heard his phone ringing. He realized that his family was worried, hurt, perhaps angry with him, but what did it matter when he was near his beloved? Absolutely none, and there was nothing to answer him. Not to his mother, not to his wife. Oh, Harry, it'll be Christmas soon. Let's order dinner, champagne, something else. It's a holiday. You can't just sit around all night. It's good not to sit around, but we won't be satisfied with love alone. The menu was next to the phone. They ordered what they needed. I wish that we would never part. Harry made a wish, piously believing it would come true. It was unknown what Emily had wished for, but they spent the night together and were happier than ever. Harry's phone rang a few more times, then went silent, and the next day, the fairy tale began to crumble. Emily informed him that she had to go back to Istanbul. Why? Don't go, darling, but I'm telling you, I can't live without you. Please stay, but not forever, not until spring. I can't stay, Harry. I've been offered a job there that I'll never get here, and I'll never get money like that. So there's no way I can stay, you know. I love you. I need you. But I'm sorry. Why don't you come to my place? I'll come, but I have a job here, and what will I do there? Begging? Sit on your neck? Okay, I'll think of something. I'll talk to you. We'll find you a job. Emily spoke coldly, businesslike. Pack your things. Look, my whole life is out there right now, and my life is you. I can't stay without you, Emily. I can't live without you. Please stay. Harry begged. My darling, my only one. The girl softened. I'm sorry, but I can't go back to the store. I can't rent an apartment here. I can't stand this cold. I can't live without sunshine for 6 months. I can't even do it for you, you know. That's why I'm telling you to get your affairs in order and come back. Emily, I haven't given up hope, Harry. Well, Emily, all you think about is yourself. Can't you live? I was getting angry, Emily. You've had a great life. You've married and had children, and your career's on the upswing, and now you want to have a mistress at your fingertips? That's convenient, and how I'm going to live my life doesn't interest you. I'm telling you I'll get divorced, we'll live together. You won't work at all, but you didn't get divorced, and you share the apartment with your mother, and I won't live with her. And from your paycheck, deduct child support for the 2 kids, your wife, and maybe your mother. What's left for the 2 of us? Harry, don't hold me up. I'm gonna miss my plane. You can walk me out if you want, but without the wailing. Harry drove his beloved to the airport. He was so depressed that not that wailing, words could not say. At least don't disappear, stay in touch. That's all he asked. I'll think of something, I'll be there. We'll be together, I promise. Emily promised not to disappear, said goodbye and left, as if vanishing into thin air. It was time for Harry to go home to his family, and he didn't know how to explain his act. What his wife and mother would say was irrelevant. Emily had left. That's what was terrible, and all the others were still there. They wouldn't go anywhere. They'd blow up, and that was it. Emily's gone. That's the trouble. And what these people will say or do, who cares? I won't even resist. Harry thought with a grim grin. Miranda was the first to arrive. Merry Christmas, she said dryly. What are you going to tell me about your adventures? I won't tell you anything, Mom. Harry sank tiredly onto the bench in the hallway. You can make something up if you want to. I haven't made anything up, and I don't want to tell the truth. Is Abigail in? Well, it doesn't take a genius imagination. It's clear without your explanation. Abigail, you say. Where else would she be? Or were you hoping she'd gone? I wasn't hoping for anything. Let's not talk about it. I'm exhausted, really. Poor guy, he's exhausted. Are you going to sit in the hallway? Well, sit there. What can I do? Her mother went to her room, and Abigail came out of their bedroom, pale, puffy-eyed, with a drooping face. Harry felt an acute pang of pity for his wife, a sense of irredeemable guilt for her. Abigail, I'm sorry. He slid off the bench, knelt, and tried to grab Abigail's hand. "I'm sorry, I don't know how it happened." "Don't." She pulled Abigail's hand away. "I don't need anything else. I don't have time." And left for the kitchen without even glancing at her kneeling, bowed husband. He sighed, got up, wandered into the room. Well, everything at home seems to have turned out all right. The mother, of course, expressed her ewe, but even in a lighter form than one might have feared. The wife, but apparently decided to kill with contempt, which is also not the worst option. The pity and guilt somehow subsided. Abigail, to all appearances, didn't really care, that is, when he didn't come and didn't answer his calls, she was probably worried, concerned. Maybe she tried on the role of a widow, but now her husband is back. He is alive, healthy, at home, so everything is normal. If she were really dissatisfied, that is, insulted, offended, killed by his actions, would have left, would have filed for divorce. Well, or scandal raised a real scandal, with breaking dishes, tears, violent explanations, and this, nothing else is not necessary. Well, do not need and please, he is also not going to explain or apologize for the rest of his life. He will live and live as before, waiting for his beloved. He won't disappear for the third time. It didn't work out so well before Christmas. Mostly because of his mother, who looked at her son with contempt, pressed her lips together, refused to eat with everyone, and hissed something judgmental. Abigail also withdrew at first, talking little, that is, almost never communicated with Harry at all. It was hard to live in such an environment, especially since there was such an icing of relatives on Christmas vacation. Even at work, there was no escape from such a harsh atmosphere. If the women wanted to punish Harry in this way, and to get some special apology from him, they miscalculated. The more his wife and mother turned away from him, the further he himself became estranged from them. He liked walking, though the weather was not favorable for it, but he was sick of sitting at home. Besides, there was always the possibility that Emily would call, and he would not talk to her in front of his own people. But she did not call, and she answered Harry's calls very seldom, referring to her work, but she did answer, and was so affectionate, so sweet in these short conversations. That's what a real woman should be like, and for me it was Emily who was perfect. And Abigail, what? She's a fish, she doesn't live, and she won't let me. I should get a divorce and go to Istanbul to my one and only, already a free man. He thought so, but he did not do anything yet, and did not even talk to his wife about divorce. It's not that he was afraid, it's just that he had 2 one-year-old children. Do they divorce people like that? In any case, there will be talk, and here all is conspired to praise Abigail. That is, she and before everyone loved her, talking about what she is nice, good, but somehow it was not conspicuous. But now you stick your nose out the door, and some neighbor girl will jump in like a tick. How's Abigail? She's so wonderful. When I see her, I'm in such a good mood. Well, God bless her. Say hello. I went to work, same song. How's your wife? You're lucky. You found the perfect wife. It's like someone's got everyone talking about Abigail. Well, you should have had her. Harry thought with annoyance. Who'd want her with 2 kids? She wasn't much use to anyone without them. Not only did the constant talk about Abigail spoil his mood, but also the fact that Emily wasn't calling him, and she was answering his calls less and less often. The conversations were getting shorter, and in the background I kept hearing music, cheerful voices. Was our reunion being delayed for a reason? If they intercept my Emily, what then? I had to make a decision. I was also constrained by the fact that there was not much money, at least for the first time they were necessary, and then we'll see. It was unbearable to keep everything inside, but there was no one to talk to. Only Mason, a close friend, he dared to say everything that had boiled up in his soul. Mason lived alone, in a rather large apartment, left by his parents, and Harry at one time even had a desire to rent a room from him, to live separately from his own, but did not dare. Mason was his own man in their house, had been friends with Miranda for a long time, and even seemed to have a fondness for Abigail. He never showed it, though. He was always correct, remembering that she was his friend's wife, but he couldn't bear it now. So Harry decided to pour out his soul to his only friend. "I've put the car on sale, and I can get a lot for it, but I have some savings left. I'm going to Istanbul. I can't go on without her, my Emily. Are you crazy? What about your family?" Mason was surprised. "What about family, Mason?" "I am superfluous there, in my present condition, you know. I can't look at my mother or my wife. Even my children are a burden." "Yeah, well, I'm sorry. That's just the way it is. What am I supposed to forgive?" "I'm not judging you, but you're doing something bad." "Aren't you ashamed?" "I'm ashamed, but not ashamed because I'm sad. I can't go on living like this." Harry was sure he was right. "Then why did you get married?" "To have kids. How will you look them in the eyes later?" Mason realized that he couldn't talk his friend out of it, but he felt so sorry for Abigail and the babies. "I think they'll understand. Anyway, when they grow up, I'll tell them this: never give up on your love, never settle for less. That may be the best advice they'll ever get, however you get it. No, Harry, I'm not moralizing to you. I'm not a priest. I'm not a teacher. If you want to go, go. I just want to say one thing. Are you sure you're not going to blow it with your love again? How many times has your Emily deceived you? Not again, I hope. And you know, Mason, her deception is worth more to me than any right. And you really don't have to lecture me. I'm not hurting anyone. The kids are young, and Abigail doesn't seem to care if I'm here or not. Look, if you want to go, go, but don't get too cheap. No, I do business with reliable people. They won't cheat." Harry left without understanding his friend's words, without heeding his advice. Mason thought gloomily about how lucky some people were, and how the lucky ones did not appreciate their good fortune. Why should he have such luck, he asked. The love of the best woman, who gave birth to 2 wonderful children, and he breaks away and goes where? To some hussy who doesn't want to know him. Yes, Mason had a thing for Abigail, but she was the wife of an old friend, therefore unavailable under any circumstances. And now, even if Harry doesn't get divorced, which he won't, he would come to Istanbul, see what the beautiful Emily was doing there, and return home with nothing. And Abigail would probably take him in. Harry started packing at home, not really thinking about what he would say to his wife. Mumbled something about a business trip. "Is that so?" said Abigail. "For how long? But how do I know how things will work out? I'll text you or call you. If things go well and the business trip lasts longer, can I consider myself a free woman?" "What are you talking about?" Harry asked unhappily. Was Abigail starting to realize something? "Do you still think I'm a homely clod who can't see beyond diapers and pots and pans? But the truth is, I see and I understand. I know you married me while loving someone else. I thought a life together would make a difference, but you're leaving, you're disappearing. How long do I have to put up with this? I know you sold the car knowing you weren't going on any business trips. Who put that in your ear? Your mother, I suppose, or some of the sympathizers who feel sorry for Saint Abigail. Well, listen to them, listen to them. No one blows me anything, on the contrary, everyone tries to assure me that you are a wonderful husband and family man, and you would be like that if it weren't for all this. I understand everything, even why you're lying to me, why you won't come clean and divorce me." Abigail's voice sounded sad, but without tears. She was not going to cry or make a scandal. "And why is that?" Harry asked. "It's very simple. You don't know how your favorite woman will take you. Maybe it will not work out with her, and then you can safely return home, where you will always be waiting for a plate of food and your own woman in bed. Don't be silly. I'm traveling for work, no women. Stop making up nonsense. I'll go and come back. I don't know how long I'll be there. And don't get on my nerves. I want to leave before my mother gets back, or she'll start giving me a hard time. Go on, there's no hurry to get home." Abigail grinned. Harry really didn't delay, took his things, kissed his children, kissed his wife on the cheek, and left without waiting for his mother. He was glad of such good fortune. Miranda would not have been delicate, would have said everything she thought about his business trips, or maybe she'd try to keep her son. That's what she told her daughter-in-law when she got home from work. "What do you mean he's gone?" "Where? Why? What business trips? Why did you let him go, Abigail?" "What could I do?" "Lie across the door? Get down on my feet?" "I still have my dignity. I put up with it because I loved him and hoped he'd love me back, but I guess he didn't. I'll file for divorce, and in the meantime, I'll probably move in with my kids. What are you doing? Why would you do that?" Now Miranda was ready to lay across the door, terrified. "What will I do without you, without grandchildren? What are you doing? My son's away. I don't know if he'll be back. Are you going to leave too?" "No, Abigail, don't leave me." The women hugged each other and decided not to part. Abigail was left to live with her mother-in-law. They had been on the best of terms from the first, and Harry's behavior did not affect it at all. Of course, it wasn't easy for them. Both of them were tied up with taking care of children who had already started walking and were very restless. Neither Miranda nor Abigail had a car, and neither had a license, so they sometimes resorted to the help of Mason, who, after the departure of a friend and the news that Abigail filed for divorce, began to visit them, to provide the necessary assistance, to play with the children, whom he sincerely loved. He was in no hurry to explain himself to Abigail, for he feared that she was still suffering because of Harry's deed, from whom he had heard very little and no news of any substance. Harry arrived in Istanbul and went straight to the hotel where Emily, according to her, worked at the information desk. On the day he checked in, there was a different, unfamiliar girl at the desk who didn't answer any questions about Emily, but that didn't bother the young man very much, because his beloved might have had a day off. However, she didn't show up the next day and the third. The hotel was luxurious, and it cost a lot to stay in it, and although Harry had money, it might run out, and he could not wait for new arrivals. After waiting for Emily to appear and despairing of seeing her, Harry decided to spend the evening in the bar, just to sit and drink, to get rid of his longing for Emily for a while. It was there, in this hot spot, that he saw his one and only half undress it. She was wriggling around a gleaming pole, stripping. She was as good as ever, but that wasn't what struck Harry. It was the sight of a dozen drunken men devouring her with their eyes, whistling, applauding, encouraging the girl to get rid of the rest of her toiletries. When Emily finished her dance, Harry moved toward her, but the road was blocked by 2 large security guards. It would be unwise to confront them. Harry decided to wait until the end of his beloved's work evening. He habitually took up his post at the service exit, hoping to intercept Emily. Staying in the hall, where she walked almost naked between the tables, exposed to everyone's lustful gaze, was unbearable. It was a long wait, but when Emily finally came out, Harry rushed to her. My dear, are you here? I've come to see you. Emily, not expecting such a meeting, did not express much joy. Yes, I'm here. Where did you come from? Why? Unexpectedly. The girl was confused. I told you I'd come. I can't do it without you. We'll always be together, won't we? I've left everyone, my mother, my wife, my children. I don't need anyone but you. And you, why are you in this bar? He asked me in a confused way. I dance here. I'm a stripper. Does that embarrass you? Emily regained her fun, playful mood. A stripper is not a prostitute. If that makes you uncomfortable, I'm not sleeping with anyone. We're not even allowed to have personal contact with visitors. And where are you staying? This hotel. Will you invite me to your place? I'm tired and hungry, to be honest. Dancing is a lot of work, but you can give it up if we're together, can't you? I'd do anything for you, anything to make you happy. Well, we'll see if I should quit my job. Emily cheered as she made her way to Harry's room. You've made some money, haven't you? Yeah, well, you've never been poor or greedy. I'm glad you came, honestly. I missed you. Always thinking about that crazy Christmas night. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hugs. Kisses later. Place your order. Let's pick something not too heavy together. I have to watch my figure. Yes, Emily's figure was in perfect shape. She became even more slender, flexible, and her acrobatic caresses drove Harry crazy. He realized he could hardly go home to his wife and children. Finally, about his beloved, with the God-given woman herself, and let her be a stripper if she liked it. Let all the men look at her, drool and die of envy for the one she is alone with every day. And he, well, yes, he'll be jealous, but Emily is no Abigail. There'll never be peace with her. And someday they will come home, live as a family, and no one will stop them from being happy. The happiness lasted for 6 months, then Harry ran out of money, and with it his love for Emily. Harry began to hint that it would be a good idea to return home to a place where he could earn money and provide Emily with the lifestyle she needed. Back home. Back to you. My home is here, Harry. I've got work here. I've got money. I've got fame. And what's out there? But I told you, I'll work, I'll provide for you. With what? Vegetables to make soup, laundry detergent to wash your socks. You see, darling, I'm used to all this squalor. I can't stand the thought of this house. No, don't ask me. I'm never going back there. But what are we going to live on? I've got nothing left, and I can't get a job at my social status. So come back, Harry. They're waiting for you at home. You won't be homeless. You won't be unemployed. Don't go whining about how you can't do it without me, and you love me and all that. I've heard it, but I've never seen it done. Well, I've seen things that don't make a man look good. You betray your own too easily. Will you betray me too? Emily, if I betrayed, it was only for your sake, and to betray you, my beloved, how can you imagine such a thing? Exclaimed Harry, wringing his hands. I can imagine it very easily, darling. Yes, you sort of love me now, but only because I haven't turned into a pet chicken. The minute you see me in a kitchen apron and old slippers, you'll start looking for another ideal. Don't shake your head. That's just the way it's going to be. Emily waved her hands in the air. You won't walk around in slippers. We'll have a housekeeper, a cook. Whatever you want, promised Harry. I was surprised at how pragmatic his beloved, who had seemed a model of carelessness and frivolity, had suddenly become. The housekeeper? I'd have to pick up her slippers, and you'd have to finish your lunches. How much is your salary? What's your alimony? What are we gonna use to rent an apartment? Or are you thinking of throwing your family out on the street? Or is your mommy gonna welcome me with open arms? Harry, come back here and get some perspective on real life. Emily, but what about then? What do we do, tell me? Harry felt a cold sweat run down his back. What kind of us? What kind of us? Wake up, there is no us. There's you with your problems and me with mine. I'm staying here because I don't see any other option. I suggest you go home and live a normal life. That seems to be the only option too. And mind you, darling, I make a good living, but I'm not going to support you. I haven't gotten to the point where I can pay men yet. It was the end of all hope. Harry still tried to persuade his beloved to leave, tried to find a way to stay in Turkey, but both these options were equally unrealizable. Realizing that he had no money left, only for the return trip, he began to pack, to Emily's great joy and relief. Don't you love me at all? Have you ever loved me? She asked him goodbye. I have. I loved a strong man who could do something, not a whiner begging for love. We had a wonderful time, we were happy, but I can't offer you anything else, I'm sorry. Harry flew home with a heavy heart, so heavy that he feared the plane would collapse under these reveries. He didn't know what he would say to his wife, how his mother would greet him. However, he cared little about that. He had parted from Emily, and probably forever. His hometown greeted him with overcast weather, a fine cold rain. It was as if nature, too, wanted to aggravate his despondency. He entered the apartment, empty and apparently for days. Where had everyone gone? Though it delayed an explanation, it was troubling. Dialed Abigail's number, no answer. The phone was either dead or turned off. Called my mom. Miranda answered right away, but her voice was so foreign and cold. Harry, where are you? I'm home, Mom. Where are you? Where's Abigail and the kids? Where did you all disappear to? We're not in the habit of disappearing. I'm in a sanitarium until the end of the month, and when I get back, I'd hate to have you home. Abigail? I don't know, but I don't think she'll be very happy to see you either. I'm sorry, I have to go to my treatments. Wow, his mother gave up on him. His wife probably didn't either. He didn't have his mother-in-law's number, nor did he want to go to her. Abigail might be there, but he didn't want to talk to her in front of witnesses. Neither did being in an empty apartment. He went out, wandering at first without purpose, but then he saw the house where Mason lived. He decided to visit his friend, to find out how things were going at work, and maybe he knew about the changes in his family. Turns out he did. Abigail and the kids were at Mason's house. It was a real family idyll. Mason and the kids were playing on the floor. Abigail was sitting next to him. Not many people paid much attention to Harry's appearance. Abigail, I'm back. Why are you here? He asked his wife. Because I'm with Mason now. Calm as ever, Abigail replied. I filed for divorce. You betrayed me? Harry couldn't believe what was happening. Consider it so, if it makes you feel better. Mason has been more of a father to our kids than you have been in 6 months. Go away, Harry. We don't want to see you. What was there to do? Harry came home without lighting a light, sat in the empty, uncozy, and cold room. That was it. The beloved abandoned, the mother turned away, the wife gone. What's left? Loneliness.